welcome Mark from Tales from the Shelf. How you doing, Mark? Thanks for joining us, man.
Doing well, man. Doing well. We're just in the dog days of summer here. Just trying
Yeah.
trying to stay alive, survive this heat wave that we're in the middle of, and this is what
Yeah,
this is where I thrive though, is nighttime when the sun goes down. So late
there
night
you
was
go.
perfect for me. So
Awesome, man. Yeah, I really appreciate you being able to jump in so quick, especially. And I know you're out on the East Coast, so you're a few hours ahead. You're in New Jersey, is that right?
yes, sir. Yep.
And and so you guys get, I mean, it gets humid, it gets hot out there. Like you guys kind of deal with it all on the East Coast, don't you?
We do kind of get all four seasons, which is cool. So I don't hate that so much. But summertime is definitely my least favorite time of year. I work in a restaurant that's like right on the water, so
Oh,
like
nice.
summertime is like when we're the busiest.
Yeah.
So like these 3 months out of the year are just like hell. So like I'm desperately awaiting September, and like
Yeah.
that's just like my favorite time of year. So I'm like really holding out for that. So,
Hell
but
yeah. What do you do? What do you do at the restaurant?
I'm a cook there, so
Okay.
it gets pretty crazy. It's super busy, like I said, right on the water, and we're one of the. I would like to think we're one of the busier seafood restaurants in South Jersey. So
Hmm.
it's crazy. So,
Yeah,
but
I worked in the service industry for a really long time. That's actually how I met my wife. She grew up in the industry. Her parents were chefs and restaurant owners and all that stuff. So she was like
okay.
making eggs for the crew when she was like 5 or 6. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And so a whole bunch of respect and love for the folks that work in the service industry. Don't you wish there was kind of like, wouldn't it be cool if you could wear like a badge or like some sort of button that was like, I work in the industry or I've been in the industry this long. So then that way, when you go out to a restaurant, people know that you're going to be cool and not be a dick.
Yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it? No, I think honestly, people have said this. It's not a unique thought of mine, but I think everyone should be required to work like 6 months in some form or
Yeah.
fashion of the service industry, because it just teaches you so many important things.
Yeah.
Um, just about how to work with people and
Hmm.
establishing a rapport with different kinds of people, and a work ethic and all of
Yeah.
that. It's so very important. So
Yeah. You get to meet people from all kinds of walks of life, different backgrounds. Some people get a job in a restaurant while they're studying to be a teacher or whatever, whatever. And then,
hmm
yeah, you get experience in high pressure situations where it's like maybe not necessarily the stakes are that high, but the pressure's there. So it kind of helps you, it forges you in the flames of the craziness of the restaurant world. And I think it helps you also like, take shit a little bit better and also learn
oh
how to
yeah.
give some shit. I'm sure you guys are always,
hmm
giving each other a hard time there in the kitchen.
yeah, and we don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but it's it yeah, it's super hot in there, and you bicker, but like I've worked with the guys I've worked with back there for like some of them like 10 years, so like we know how to work together and stuff. So
That's awesome, man.
um
That's
e-
really cool.
and even if you get into an argument, by the end of the night, it's usually like, all right, we're like, we
Hey,
squash it. It's no big deal.
yeah, the heat of the moment can bring out the ugliness sometimes.
Exactly.
That's
In the
for
high
sure.
stress pressure situation, people are, likely to be a little irritable. So,
For
but
sure. But
so
yeah, that's awesome that you do that. I sell insurance and it's not like, I enjoy what I do and everything, but there are days where I'm like, man, I just wish I could walk into a place and I just like the work is already laid out in front of me and I don't have to improvise or find my own workflow. I kind of miss the days of, working in the restaurants where you just know, all right, we're going to go in there, we're going to get our rush. It's going to be crazy for a little bit, but we're all going to like walk out of there happy with some cash in our pocket and
yeah.
maybe a couple drinks during the close. Who knows? Right?
Yes, exactly. We all get our shift drink at the end of the night.
There it
Um,
is. There it is.
that's interesting though, man. It's like because I've worked where I work for like 12 years now, and there's something about just like the monotony of it, of just going in
Hmm.
and knowing you're going to do the exact same thing you did yesterday, that really like wears on you. But
Mm.
and that's really only in the summer months, because in the fall it's really chill, and it's
Mhm.
it's a lot less stressful, and you don't mind so much doing the same thing because you actually have some room to breathe and stuff. So,
Yeah.
but I have always wondered what it would be like to have a job where it's different, and you kind of, like you said, you have to kind of go out there and find your hustle,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah, and you feel a different kind of pressure because you're like, I need to sell this insurance,
Right.
where it's like
It's
you
like
work at a
all on you.
restaurant. Yeah, you just the business is going to come. I grew up in Southeast Alaska, and it's a huge tourist town. So the cruise ships would come in. Our population would like double in a day just with tourists.
Oh wow.
So, and I worked in the restaurants there, and it was wild, man. I mean, probably similar to what you experienced there working on the water, where you have a 6-hour shift and 3 hours of it is just absolute hell, but very lucrative
Yeah.
and fun.
Yeah, like from
You,
6 to close is like when it really gets wild.
yeah. Well, cool, man. You've been doing YouTube. You were telling me what it was, fall of 2022. Is that right? When you started
Yeah.
doing YouTube?
Yeah, that's
And now,
correct.
what got you into it? Was it just something where you were like a big fan of other YouTubers and an audience member, and you just said, you know what? I'm a nerd about this stuff too. I'm just gonna do it.
That's pretty accurate. Yeah. Was spending a ton of time on YouTube. I was watching guys like Lee at Drum Domes,
Mm-hmm.
um, guys like Dave McCrae, which is actually where I found your channel, and we haven't talked about this yet. But I remember
Sweet.
the day when you said something in his chat. It was a live or something, and he like shouted you out, and I think you got a decent boost from that. So that's where
Mm-hmm.
I found your channel. Is actually I subbed from that, and then think I've been subbed to you ever since then.
Hell
So
yeah.
guys like him, Dave, Lee from Drum Dums, Cody Leach, people like that, and then
Mm-hmm.
after that, I got into guys like Planet CHH, Nick with the Lost River Drive-In. Those guys are all super cool. The
Mm-hmm.
list goes on. There's too many to
Yeah.
name. Um, but then I have a buddy who actually collaborates with me on a lot of my videos. He helps me with some of the technical side of things. He's teaching me things like graphic design, how to use Adobe Premiere, like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he helps design my intro and my logo and stuff. And he works in like the tech space. He like edits podcasts for people and does a lot of graphic design, like freelance work. So he's
Oh,
very
cool.
well versed in all that sort of thing. So, and he's a very creative individual himself. He like makes music. He's good at a lot of different things. We have a live show that we do ourselves, where it's not scheduled really. It's kind of whenever we have the time in our schedule to
Mm-hmm.
do it. Um, so he kind of gave me the push to finally take a dive and start doing creative things of my own, because I've always been very opinionated. I've always loved movies and media and video games and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
he kind of just gave me the push to say, if you need some help, I'll help you. And then you just kind of have to jump in, and the kind of the rest is history.
Yeah, it's true. You just I felt like when I started mine channel last summer, just a year and 1 week ago, it was the same kind of thing. It was like, I just got to dive in. I just got to do it. The first video is the toughest one. You just got to like let go. It's like a trust fall with yourself. So you just have to be like, I'm just going to put this out there. And I knew that once I put one thing out there, I was like, now I can't take it back. Like if I take
Yeah.
it back, I look like the biggest coward ever. So it's
Right.
like, so it was kind of like all you have to do is like bite that bullet the first time. And then I don't know if you have a similar feeling, but as as things kind of started picking up and I just got more ideas for videos and all that, it sort of got addicting. It was like you finish one video and then you're like, all right, what's the next thing? Like, what's the next topic I want to tackle? What did I learn from this last video that I can improve on next time? I don't know
Yeah.
if you're like critical about yourself
Oh,
that way. I
so
know that I am.
yes.
So always looking for whether it's like, oh, why do you use the same cadence like in 3 sentences in a row in that review? All that kind of stuff. But it's really cool to have those, all those guys you were mentioning, like Christian, Nick, Lee, all those folks, Dave as well. What's blown me away with YouTube is just how supportive all of the other content creators are. There's this feeling of it's not really like, oh, you're trying to get in on my piece of pie. Like to me, it feels like the attitude is like the pie is so massive that there's something for
Yeah.
everyone here. You know, there's room for
Yeah.
everyone, and you know, we can all lift each other up.
Because if you watch one of those guys, you watch all of them, is what I've
Hmm.
found. You know, so like I've always felt like if I see someone on like Christian's channel or Nick's channel, I'm like, oh, like let me go check this guy out because odds
Hmm.
are there's a good like Brandon Tabatato that they do the Planet Dirty with. Like
Yeah.
I've found so many channels that way, and it's super cool. And it's like, yeah, like I said, if you watch one of these guys, you're likely to watch all of them. Like it's not like you're just gonna watch one of them, you know. So yeah, and they all do feel super welcoming, super cool to
Yeah.
kind of be welcomed into this community of ours.
Yeah, and there's like this you know, I played a bunch of punk rock and stuff in my younger years and all that, and it's, you know, feels similar to that in certain ways. I think it's, you know, kind of blows me away. I feel like it's even more supportive than the music scene, because that part of show business can just be really weird. Even if everybody's a nobody, people kind of are like, you know, they just want to take it all, at least in my experience. But meeting people like, you know, Ken from Sledgehammer here,
Another great
you know,
example, yeah.
yeah, just people that treat you like, you know, they give you the benefit of the doubt and treat you like a good friend right at the beginning. And it's like, well, now it's up to you if you're gonna fumble the ball and screw up the friendship, because people just seem to be accepting from the get-go, which is awesome. And yeah, you're right. It's like you watch one person and they're like, oh, you like Halloween, huh? Well, how about this guy? So, you know,
Yeah,
speaking of
exactly.
Halloween, I see the banner there behind you. You know, I watched
Oh,
your
yeah.
Halloween franchise ranking, and it was like the
Mm.
first few spots at the bottom of the ranking were like exactly the same as mine. I think you started out with Resurrection, and then Rob Zombies, I think, was the next one.
God, yeah,
Um,
I'd have to look. I can't remember the exact order, but yeah, I know that those Resurrection's definitely at the bottom. I don't like Rob Zombie's Halloween 1
yeah.
pretty much at
Yep.
all. So those, yeah, those are probably right at the bottom.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I'm one of those people that I really appreciate his sequel, for same kind of reasons that you said. Just like it takes chances, it goes somewhere different. He actually gets to make his own movie. Yeah, whereas the remake, I'm just like, did we really need this? You know?
Yeah, yeah, and you know, we both watched Dave McRae, right? So
Mhm.
I would also consider myself to be a Halloween purist in that, you know, it really doesn't get better than the original, and a lot of the sequels are unnecessary.
Yeah,
That's just my opinion. I know it had, you know, um, the franchise has every entry has fans. You know, even some of the,
sure.
you know, every entry has fans. So I'm not trying to disparage any of them at all. But for my
Yeah.
personal tastes, that first movie was like, you know, that was kind of all I needed. That's not to say there's not good ones though. I like Halloween 2. I like Halloween 3. 4 is also
Mhm.
good. I like 2018. So,
Yeah.
um, you know,
I
there's
mean,
fun to be had.
if they never made any sequels, we'd be sitting here in 2024 being like, why didn't they ever make a sequel to that? You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
would be,
yeah,
we'd be talking about it the way people talk about My Bloody Valentine or The Prowler or like The Burning or something like that, where it's just like, what happened here where it didn't turn into a
yeah.
bona fide, you know, franchise? And yeah, I mean, I feel the same kind of way. Oddly enough, though, with all these slasher movies, to me, they're kind of like comfort films. I don't know
Oh,
if
big
that's a
time.
weird thing to say or something that all horror fans kind of get, because even the bad ones, like, I can still put them on. Like, I'll still watch all the Halloween movies during October. I might even watch them
Oh, yeah, I
another
own them
time
all.
throughout the
Yeah.
year. Yeah. Like, sometimes I put them on and maybe I'll put like a commentary on and just do some chores, and you know,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
just to have it on in the background's really fun. I see Ken here is saying that Resurrection is a good movie. I think there's some things about Resurrection where I'm like, okay, you got me there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know about Resurrection. Is it, you know, it's right there with Rob Zombies and maybe a little H2O. I don't know. H2O for me almost gets worse every time I watch it,
I
or I
do
enjoy
I
it less.
H2O is one of those ones where it baffles me where because it's really beloved by a lot of people, and they praise the Jamie Lee Curtis performance, and they directly compare it to the 2018 uh role because they're kind of similar,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
people say they like H2O better, and it's like this is
Mhm.
not for me. I've never liked it. I've always thought of it as like you know, it's commonly referred to as like a Scream kind of vibe,
Sure.
and you
Yeah.
know, it doesn't really feel like Halloween to me at least. And
Hmm.
I just never the look of Michael Myers. That's my problem with most of these sequels. Is the
Oh
look
yeah.
of Myers is so goofy,
Hmm.
and Myers is Halloween. So like,
Yeah.
if I can't look at the guy without kind of being like ugh or like
Yep.
laughing, it's dead on arrival. Like the whole movie's shot. You could have everything else
Yes.
working for you, but like if that's not right, just forget about it. Like don't even try.
I'm right there with you. It feels like I'm speaking to a brother from another mother because I always tell people, you know, it's for me the portrayal of Michael is the most important thing. You know,
Yeah.
that's why the David Gordon Green movies are like all in my top 5, pretty much. You know, it's like
I like
because
they're
they have
growing
the
on me, man.
edge in those, you know, and same. I did a stream with Barry from Wolfman's Got Nards last weekend where he like you know, tells me why H2O is the best sequel in the series. And then I sort of, you know, it would be like point counterpoint. And man, it's like, you know, a lot of people when they bring up the mask, they're like, oh, the CGI mask, whatever, whatever. I'm like, no, it's the fact that the mask is so inconsistent. In the final act, it's like they're switching from shot to shot. It's the terrible K&B mask and then the not really good Stan Winston mask. And I
Yeah.
know that Winston is a legend. You can't take anything away from him. The guy does awesome work, but not on the mask. I don't know. For me, I just would have kept the curse mask from the opening scene and just kept that throughout the movie. But I know why they didn't,
Yeah.
but I think the curse mask is way better than all of the other masks in H2O.
I don't know the logistics behind it, but the fact that the mask is so inconsistent from entry to entry
Mhm.
is just that's something that really like kind of kill like because look at Jason. You know, they
Mhm.
like his once he gets the hockey mask, it's more or less the same. You know, they even keep the little notch in it where he gets hit with the
Yeah.
axe. All the
Yeah.
way up until like Jason Goes to Hell, he's got that thing. So like
Yeah.
and possibly further than that. I'm not quite sure if it's in the ones after that, but or if it's in Jason X, I mean. But
Well,
like there's so much consistency and then Myers it's just all over the fucking place. So
yeah, he is. It's one of those things that I think maybe back in the 80s and 90s they thought, "Oh, no one's ever going to watch these in 4K and pick through them and watch them like numerous
and
times.
pick
There's
them
never going
through
to be
like you
some
have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's never going to be anything called YouTube where people make a living talking about these movies, you know, like how could they ever, you know, foresee that? But yeah, it's I'm right there with you. That's one of the reasons why like Halloween 4 is a rough one for me too, just because the mask
Yeah.
is pretty tough.
It's probably one of the
But
worst things about that movie, to be honest. And the movie's
yeah,
solid all aside from that. So like if they had
yeah.
nailed the mask in that one, 4 would probably be even
Mhm.
higher, I think, in like the pulp in like the zeitgeist or whatever.
For sure. And I don't mean to be crass or anything, but if you showed us Kelly Meeker's boobs, that would have been great too. So,
Dude,
you know.
yeah, I mean, look, we're all anyone who says that that is like, it's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
You're lying to yourself. You know, if you didn't want to see what was going on with that. But apparently, there's a
Oh.
movie where she does show them, so you can check that out if you're interested.
Mhm.
I certainly
Mhm.
haven't seen that, but you know,
I don't know what you're talking about. So you're saying that on the internet you can see naked people for free? What is this?
apparently there is a movie where that actress did in
Yeah.
fact uh, show what the sheriff's daughter was working with. So
Good old Kathleen Kinmont. What a sweetie.
I can't recall the name of that movie, but yeah, apparently it is out there if you were curious.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about because I've seen the evidence.
Yeah, well, look, I was curious, man. You know, you can't just dangle
Yeah,
that carrot in front of my face and then expect me to not want to follow through. So
yeah.
it was just
Sasha Jensen. Sasha Jensen got to see him. I want to see him too. All right.
right, right. Yeah, it's
Uh,
only fair.
And then, you know, another video that really stuck out to me when I was going through your, you know, your catalog there on your channel, you had a video about, you know, why television, I think it's called Why TV Sucks Now. Is that what
Yeah,
it's called?
yeah,
And I was like, oh, this is really interesting because everyone in the chat can attest to this. I'm always droning on about how modern television, it's like the first 5 to 10 minutes of the show is interesting. The last 5 to 10 minutes of the show is interesting. And they end on a cliffhanger to get you to watch the next one. but they have these hour-long or 40-minute shows where there's all of this useless filler in the middle. And it just seems like you could have just made a trilogy of movies instead of making like a few seasons of a TV show or something. And maybe I'm just such a film fan that I like the way that, stories are told within film, that you get, 90 minutes to 2 hours to tell your story. Even if you tell a trilogy, you still have a complete story within each film. But you kind of brought some things to light for me that I hadn't really thought of. Like you talk about, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is your favorite show, and it's one of my favorites as well. So you mentioned some of those kind of like throwaway, like one-off sort of episodes, like where they get to play with the structure, they get to do something that's a total departure from the regular show. And that kind of went away. You bring it up in your video, once they went away from like the 24 episode model and broke it down to like now where it's like, usually like 8 to 12 or something like that episodes per show. So you don't get anything where the creativity really gets to sort of stretch and, kind of push the boundaries of what they're doing. I'm curious to know, are there any modern shows that you enjoy that you think kind of break that mold? And what is within the last like 10 years, are there any TV shows that stick out to you?
Yeah, I do watch some TV, but I'm notorious, like same as you, I would always rather watch a movie. Because the way my personality is, when I start a show, I want to just like, assuming it's a show that's already aired and it's complete, like something like, Dexter or Breaking Bad or whatever. If I was just watching that today for the first time, it would consume my life and I would want to watch it until I was done. At the expense of all other movie watching and, video games or whatever else I'm got going on. So that's just kind of how, because I want to get through it. I'm a binger. So I'm watching like House of the Dragon, which is, a really solid show. I don't know if you're into like the high fantasy Game of Thrones stuff, but that's a really solid show. I like I like Stranger Things, but again, like I can't even remember what happened in like I can remember, but I would want, I feel like I would want to rewatch it ahead of whatever the next season, whenever we get that. And that's a point that I make in that video, is how far away these seasons are spread now. And I know that there's factors to that, like our writer's strike and, COVID and stuff. But like, I do maintain that outside of those incidents, shows definitely do just take too long to produce now, because everything is so like, the budgets are so through, like the big shows anyway. This isn't a catch-all statement, but a lot of the bigger shows that they take so long to produce. Stranger Things 5 is going to be like 8 feature-length films, basically. So they're taking forever to make it, and that it's just it's not even really TV anymore at that point.
The kids are going to be 25 by the time the season's over.
It's just like everything is such a departure from how it used to be.
Yeah, I remember you bringing up that point because, back in those dramas, especially, I mean, even the sitcoms and everything, it was like, 24 episodes were kind of spread out over, 7 or 8 months with a little bit of a break, like around sweeps week. Usually there's a break around like, Christmas, or maybe they only do the holiday episodes and all that. Cause then you basically have the summer where you don't need to pay attention to your TV show, but then when you go back to school or whatever, that's when the shows all start up again. So
you're right. Miss that too, man. Because like now it's like these streamers can just dump shit whenever they want. They don't have to adhere to that anymore. But back in those days, when like September would roll around and like the new shows would come out, or the new seasons, like, I don't know, there's something kind of cozy about that. And I feel like we don't really get that anymore.
Yeah, we definitely don't. And it's also like TV is trying to almost sort of, it seems like, replace film in a way. Like they're raising the budget.
Yes, exactly.
But they're also not like, I would just rather have movies, like exactly. I just got so disinterested. I ended up getting rid of Disney Plus because even though I liked, the first couple seasons of Mandalorian, the first season of Loki, I thought was pretty cool. Started watching some of the other shows and I was just like, man, Falcon and Winter Soldier was just like depressing and
I didn't
not
watch
very
that.
like, I'm like, how am I inspired to watch this? You know, and it just seems
Yeah.
like TV for me, it's like you're wasting my time. You know, get rid of the filler, put out movies instead. You know what really pushed me over the edge and made me realize that I kind of hated TV was The Walking Dead.
Oh boy,
I
don't get me
liked the
started.
first. I liked the first season. You know, when Frank Darabont's in charge, the first season is fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
But man, by the second season, I'm like, oh my God, every one of these episodes are just the people bitching about like, we need to go get food. And then John Berthnall with his like look he just has
Yeah,
the look
that's
and
actually pretty good.
and risk everyone's lives. And it's like, yeah, dude,
Yeah.
we need food. Like you are disrespecting the fuck out of Romero by making the zombie story instead of it being an allegory for human beings not agreeing on like really important issues. Now it's just about like, well, we need to leave our camp to get food, and like people get upset about it. And I'm like, oh my God, The Walking Dead. Like, I appreciate that now people know what zombie movies are, but it's almost like when punk rock got kind of big in the mainstream in the 90s, I was like,
Mm.
oh, but the worst stuff is getting popular. Like, you know, you feel like this. I don't know if you're this way, and I hope people don't think I'm a gatekeeper, but you do feel protective to a certain
Yes,
degree about
that's
the things
the
you
word.
really love.
That's
You
the
know,
word. Yeah. No, I think it's
it's
hard to fight that urge, you know,
mm-hmm.
when you feel
It,
when you are in that position where there is something that you've always kind of liked and it's becoming more mainstream.
yeah, it's becoming mainstream, and then you look around and you're like, yeah, but the people that are like not really the best at it are the ones getting the most popular.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't like, for me with punk rock, it was like, wow, everyone loves Blink, but like, where's the love for NoFX? And I get that NoFX isn't on MTV, but like, where's the love for like the real friggin' the punk rock that actually like pushes it and gets a little uncomfortable? Or even same kind of thing with Romero. It's like everyone knows what The Walking Dead is, and I bet half of the people that enjoy The Walking Dead, they might know what Night of the Living Dead is, but if you said Dawn of the Dead, they'd think you were talking about Zack Snyder's film, which is a great film, but they
Yeah.
wouldn't know. They wouldn't even know it was a remake, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's speaking to a larger issue of there's people like us who know all that stuff, and then there's people who just want to watch like a cool show on Sunday night, and
Mm-hmm.
then through osmosis they perhaps are exposed to these other things, you know, if they're into it enough and they're like, I want some
Yeah,
more of this. So that's where it can be a positive, is when people decide that they like it so much that they want to seek out more things like that. And that's what's good
that's
for
true.
that's what's good for the genre, I would say, is like if we're talking about zombies specifically, like um I would encourage that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
it's when it's when it's become so popular that all we get is like all these Walking Dead sort of ripoffs and Walking Dead
Spin-offs.
spin-offs, and it
Yeah.
becomes so ingrained. I have a complicated history with The Walking Dead. I watched it as it was airing all the way up until like season 7,
Mm-hmm.
and then I stopped because I just wasn't interested anymore. And then I think maybe 2 years ago, yeah, right when I was starting YouTube 2 years ago, I went back and finally finished the whole show. Because I think I almost did it out of spite, because I was like, I want to be able to say that I finished this fucking show, because I don't like doing that. Like if I when it's as long as show it is, I think it's like 11 seasons. To be able to say
Jeez.
I only watched like half of it would just bother me for the rest of my life. So I kind of needed the closure, and I wanted to be able to
Gotcha.
make up my own mind about it, because I've heard conflicting things. But it's a really, it has its real, like, when Walking Dead is good, it's really good. And when it's bad, it's like, dude, you needed to wrap this up like 3 seasons ago.
Yeah.
So I'm sure everyone has an opinion on The Walking Dead. It's a complicated show. Like I said, when it's good, it's really good, and some of the most intense things that I've ever seen on like a network show. So
Yeah, and I think that like the idea, the conception of it, like, you know, really happy for Robert Kirkman. Is it Kirkman? Is that the guy's name? Robert
uh
Kirkman?
yeah, I think that's his
Something
name.
like that. You know,
Yeah, the guy who wrote
so
the graphic novel. Yeah.
yeah, so I really like the graphic novel. To me, it's not like the conceit of wanting to tell a zombie story like that. It's just that when I see television and I'm like, oh man, television out there taking advantage of people again. You know, it just is like the friggin' media sometimes where I'm like, oh geez, now people think that this is the zombie, like this is the shit or whatever. But yeah, after season 2, I was like, I'm out of here. I can't take it. Same thing with Stranger Things. And it was a similar sort of vibe for me because I felt like Stranger Things season 2, they peeled everything back and they did a rehash of the first season, like all over again. And I'm like, you bastards, how dare you? We had this whole season where everyone's like learning about the truth. And then the beginning of season 2 is, oh, we're going to hide 11. And like, you know, sheriff guy is a total wreck again. And it's just like, so all the progression that happened in the first season, we're just going to like take them right back to where they were. And I felt like The Walking Dead did that too. Yeah.
Yeah. You ever watch Cobra Kai?
I haven't seen Cobra Kai, actually. Is it good?
Cobra Kai season like 1 was really, really good. And I watched and I was shocked to say this because I never thought it would be a good show. I thought it was kind of like lame because I really love the Karate Kid. I think it's one of my favorite movies from the 80s. But Cobra Kai does this thing where this is something I hate in TV, where two characters, there's a disagreement. Maybe somebody overhears something or witnesses something out of context, and it totally reframes the way they think about that person. And now these people are fighting, where if really all they did, if like they could solve the problem by just talking and being like, oh, actually, it was this thing, not what you thought it was. And then the other person would just be like, oh, okay, so now there's no problem. But instead of doing that, it's like manufactured drama, and it causes a wedge. And it's like it's like the laziest kind of writing device you could ever use, and I hate it. Cobra Kai does that a lot. And they also do the thing where they just kind of spin their wheels and they kind of just do the same thing season to season. And it's like, you know, Johnny and Daniel are finally going to team up and join forces. And then something happens to make them hate each other again. And then the next season, they're becoming friends again. And then something and it's like, we're just doing the same shit over and over and just to draw this thing out. So it's annoying.
Well, and it's one of those things where it's like, you know, by definition, writing a story, you know, things are, what's the term I'm trying to look for? Oh my gosh, I'm having a total brain fart, Mark. You know, there's everything is contrived, you know, when you're writing by definition. But when people write something where it's like, oh, this is like really contrived, like the classic like 80s romantic comedy where, like you're saying, there's like the misunderstanding, you know, like
it always happens in like a third act. Yeah.
The couple's about to get together, and then like the guy's ex comes in. She like hugs the guy, and before he pushes her away, the girl sees it from like 50 yards away and thinks that like he's back with the ex or whatever. And
exactly. Or she kisses him, and you know she forces him, and then she sees it. And thinks, it's Cobra Kai does shit like that all the time.
It's a total trick, and it's one of those things that sort of cheats the audience, right? Because at some point you've got to have them have a full resolve. I mean, I think like one of my favorite things is seeing that like redemptive, you know, a redemption arc for a villain, like, you know, something like X2, like the second, you know, X-Men movie where, you know, Professor X and Magneto team up. And I know they do it in other movies too. I always love that dynamic of like a bad guy that sometimes was like able to team up with his adversary because they had a common enemy. Even like, you know, Spider-Man 2 with Dr. Octopus's character, like he ends up sort of having a heroic end to, you know, everything that he causes. And yeah, it seems like sometimes in TV, they just, like you said, it's this manufactured drama. I think one of the reasons too why people go around, like, you know, increasingly it seems like as a society we're a bit more anxious and stressed out. We're more like willing to just assume and jump to the conclusion that like if somebody says anything conflicting with what we believe, that they're like now our enemy or whatever. I feel like sometimes like the fact that people watch all this drama-filled TV makes it really difficult for people to have like conversations about difficult things, because they start thinking that like you get confused. Life and television, you start blending them together. They feed into this drama with everything they watch, how can they not bring that drama into their everyday lives?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that I think a lot of people are willing to, a lot of people can make the distinction, but yeah, there are definitely people who will kind of carry that out, and
Mm-hmm.
take their work home with them, so to speak.
Yeah. That's why I love, horror and comedy are my two favorite
Mm,
genres.
yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean I don't like any dramas and all that kind of stuff. I don't find myself like really interested in, for example, like a movie like Oppenheimer that's I would imagine it's got to be a cinematic marvel. I'm just not interested. Like I just don't like a biopic. I'm just like, I could just read about the guy. It's probably way more truthful to read a Wikipedia article than watch any movie about him.
Yeah.
Especially I'm a big music fan, and man, like the notorious track record that like music biopics have, they're like the worst version of biopics because they just straight up make up stuff and just like,
Yeah, I don't like that.
really the whole like all my, I have family members that are like, you have to see Bohemian Rhapsody. And I'm like, I love Queen and I know about all the lies they tell in that movie, just about like how things happened and went down. Like if they're gonna lie about them being in the studio, then why would I even want to watch it? Or
Yeah.
there was Andre 3000 plays, I think it was Jimi Hendrix in a biopic, and they have a scene where he's like beating one of his girlfriends, and like the woman came out and was like, that never happened. And I'm like, that's a fucking crazy thing to put in a movie about somebody.
Yeah, that is. If you need to make damn sure that happens, if you're gonna put that in your movie.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, you're vilifying this dead guy. Like this is bizarre.
Yes, it is weird.
But that's why, for me, movies, music, TV, they're just kind of like an escape from all the seriousness. I mean, I don't mind dealing with the seriousness in its own way, but I guess when it comes time to ingest like entertainment or art, I just sort of look for that escape, that roller coaster. Is that something like when you are thinking about your fandom or picking out something that you're, going to watch? Do you ever have that conscious decision, or do you find that you just, are picking something just because you want to watch it?
Man, I like to consider myself pretty well-rounded. Like I try to see a lot of different movies. I like you bring up Oppenheimer. Man, I felt like I was on an island with that one because I enjoyed it, but wasn't even in my top 10 of last year. I bought it because it's like reference quality. Nolan supports physical media, so it felt like it's something that was worth supporting and purchasing.
Yeah.
But biopics, especially music biopics, I don't like. I'm not interested. I don't think they've made one yet about a musician that I care enough to like be like, man, I really need to see that. Like they're making one about the Beatles. I don't care for the Beatles. Look, I was not born in time for the Beatles, I don't think.
Yeah.
It's not my cup of tea. So yeah, nothing like that really moves the needle for me. I'd like to consider like horror is definitely my favorite genre, and it's something that's the easiest to turn on. Believe it, like that might sound odd to some, but like especially if it's like a movie like House of Wax, the remake comes to mind. It's super low effort. Like you can have, like you were saying earlier, you can put that on. You don't necessarily have to pay attention. You can be cleaning, you can be doing something else, and it's just fun. You look up every now. Oh, Paris Hilton just got her head cut off. Like there's something fun about that. And but then I also like to switch gears and watch horror that is like super engaging and like really disturbs you, like something like Long Legs that just came out. Really great film that I really enjoyed. So horror as a spectrum is like contains so many subgenres within it that are all like worthy of your time.
Yeah,
so it's hard to decide what to watch is basically what I'm saying.
Horror is like metal. Metal is like every band almost has its own genre in metal. Sometimes it feels like I can't even, when people say like, oh, they're black metal, I'm like, which one's black metal again? Like oh,
Right.
they're death metal. I'm like, wait, is black metal the one that has like the keyboards? Like, what? I can't keep all the stuff
And
straight.
they're like, no, that's doom metal. And I'm like, oh
I'm
fuck.
like,
All right.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
like this. I like the sludgy stoner stuff. All right, I like Megadeth. You know, I'm hip. I'm with it.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, I see you. You're wearing your Purple Rain shirt.
Oh yeah.
So you know, I mean, Prince is one of those artists. I think similar, kind of similar to Queen, where it's like any genre of music was on the table. I feel like those are the
Yeah.
really special musicians. Like, you know, the older I get and the more I look back and everything, I'm like, man, you know, a band like Queen was doing like arena rock. They were doing R&B. They did ragtime. They did, you know, like acoustic, like almost rockabilly kind of stuff too. And then a guy like Prince was, I mean, man, he's just whatever he wanted to write, he wrote and did an incredible job. Do you think they're like, how far away do you think we are from a Prince biopic movie?
I'm surprised there isn't one already.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, probably gonna happen. They got that Michael Jackson one coming soon, I think, right? That's
Oh,
some
they do.
Yeah, that's in production, I think.
Oh,
And they're
that's
actually
going to be a wreck.
I think they cast like one of his nephews as Michael.
Oh, okay.
Um, so I don't know. But again, like I don't care. Like
Yeah.
I like films for that escapism. Like I don't necessarily want to go on this person's life journey with them that I'm really not even a big fan of anyway. Like
Yeah.
a lot of the music I like is like I'd be shocked if any of my favorite bands ever got, you know, a bio. Like I really like bands like Fall Out Boy and Blink 182. I like Newfound Glory, but then I
Mm.
also like man, I like Ready for the World, which is like this 80s like pop group of guys, and like they were like a boy band. I like a little bit of country. Like my music taste is so hard to pin down that
Yeah.
I'm so kind of spread all over the place because I get bored with things and I really like to be
Mhm.
listening to something different all the time. So yeah, I'm not like into the Bob Marleys and you know things like that that are
Yeah.
the ones that are getting the biopics. They just
Yeah.
don't move the needle for me, you know? I just can't get
Yeah.
interested.
Me neither. The kind of reggae that I like is the stuff that moves a little bit more. I'm a big punk rock guy. So I grew up, I was born in 82. So when I was in like seventh grade, Green Day popped. It was like 94. And
Mm,
then I found out about like skate punk. So I started listening to like Bad Religion and Pennywise and NoFX and Face to Face and all that stuff. And then, you know, later on in high school, got into Saves the Day. I know they're from Princeton. I don't know, you know, relatively close to where you're at there. And
yeah.
then like my favorite band of all time is from New Jersey. They're called Lifetime and they're from New Brunswick. And they're a
Oh
band that
shit.
I don't meet a lot of people that love Lifetime, but they were like mid 90s is kind of when they kicked off. And they inspired all those bands like Saves the Day, Taking Back Sunday, Newfound Glory a little bit. I know Chad, like there was an article I read once where they all listed a band, a broken up band that they wish they could see. And like two of the guys picked the Beatles, and I think Chad from Newfound Glory picked Lifetime. And I was like, well, that makes sense because I enjoy that like super
That's great.
syrupy kind of sugary pop punk. Like I do really like that. In there's certain times where I'm like, man, that's just all I want to like. I want to go right back to high school and listen to all that stuff. But yeah, very
Yeah,
eclectic.
it's a
I'm
trip.
kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I
Uh,
really like oh go ahead.
no, go ahead, man.
Okay, I thought you were about to say something. I'm
I'm
just looking at
always
like
about to say something.
it's hard, right? Especially on lives. No, dude, I'm like looking at my Spotify right now because I know I'm gonna be like later tonight. I'm gonna be like, why didn't I say I listened to this person? I'm
Yeah.
gonna like, I really like a band called Turnover. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They're like dream pop, like almost emo. But then they have this other album where it's like very upbeat. So like, I like bands that like reinvent themselves from album to album.
Oh yeah.
I
Hmm.
like bands like Beach Fossils. Listen, I like the Smiths a lot too. So
Oh
like
yeah. The Smiths
I'm
are great.
really into the Smiths, and then I listen to um like synth wave, like that you know, kind of like trancy, kind of like nostalgic. It's meant to sound like it was recorded in the
Yeah.
80s.
Like
You know,
the midnight and all that.
yes, exactly, the midnight. big
Yeah.
time. And then I also listen to like a lot of rap music. So like
Mhm.
it's super hard to pin down. I like arena rock. I like Stan Bush, Europe, stuff like that. And then I like some
Stand.
yacht. I like yacht rock with like Steve Winwood. So like
Yeah.
it's
Kenny
really
Loggins.
yeah, yeah, and anything that's gonna like make me feel something basically. And there's something for every mood that I'm in. So
Yeah.
that's what's great about music.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the whole thing about music is it's, you can just sort of go with, there's certain days, like I swear, like Friday, going into the weekend on, or when it's a beautiful day, I'm going to put on like one of the finger records and I'm just going to listen to some like kind of ska thing or something that just makes like I'm in again or whatever. There's
Yeah.
this band from the absolutely just fell in love with about a year ago. They're called the Beths.
Hmm.
Piece. They have a female singer and songwriter, but all three guys in the band, including the drummer, they all sing backups, and this band sounds massive. And it's sort of like if you took like a garage kind of pop punky sound and mixed it with like elements like Weezer or the Cranberries, kind of like a 90s nostalgic kind of thing mixed with something modern. It's tough to describe, but if you
Yeah.
enjoy like power pop music, you got to check out the Beths. They are like, I think they're one of the best bands I've ever heard in my life. And I rarely, I feel like the older I get, the tougher it is for me to have my socks blown off by
Yeah.
someone,
Yeah.
but I went head over heels. And yeah, Smiths, absolutely. I love, I got a lot of nostalgia for the 80s stuff because I have 4 older siblings. So even though I was born in the early 80s, like I remember a lot of that music because it was around me growing up. So like Tears for Fears and REO Speedwagon,
Yeah.
like those kinds of bands, like I'm a huge fan. I'm also a really big Elvis Costello guy. I don't know if you're an Elvis Costello guy, but
No, I think I was born too late. I was born in '94, so
yeah.
I didn't get a ton of Costello. But the interesting thing about it, like you said, is it's like a lot of the music that I like is deeply important to me is like stuff that my mom would play. Like
Hmm.
she would play like a lot of like Fleetwood Mac and stuff, and like Cher when she would like
Mm,
clean the house and stuff. And
nice.
stuff like that, you hear that and it kind of like takes you back a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And even like with me with Elvis Costello, like I think I knew who he was when I was growing up, but I got into him. I was like 20. So,
Mm.
so this is like, and then I went back putting out records in the mid 70s. So that's like, I went way back to the early stuff. It's funny, like American Psycho, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Right. So when Patrick Bateman's like talking about Huey Lewis in the news, he says like some people compare him to Elvis Costello, blah blah blah. It's actually that's a really funny like deep cut joke because the band that played on Elvis Costello's first didn't get to pick his band. After the first record was a hit, the label let him find his own guys, but the band that was his backing band on the first record was called Clover, and those guys became the news for Huey Lewis. So it's like
Oh shit.
this crazy joke where I'm like, when I first saw that, I got like goosebumps. I'm like, I'm
That's
getting
pretty layered.
goosebumps over a joke in American Psycho. Yeah.
That was for you and the other people who
Specifically, yeah.
would understand that. Um,
I'm basically Patrick Bateman.
there's like a crazy thunderstorm happening outside, so if I dip or if you hear thunder or anything,
Okay.
that's why. So it's kind of a vibe, but hopefully it doesn't
Awesome.
interfere with any of the connections or anything. Yeah.
Everything is rolling great. That would be cool if we could hear a little thunder. We had a whole bunch, we're in monsoon season here. It's been relatively chill. But last weekend we finally got a storm where it was just the lightning was popping off for hours.
Yeah.
Um,
Last
but
night was
and
like that too for us.
yeah, it's probably I feel like in the Midwest and some parts of the East Coast, it's like it could be any night. You could have like a beautiful day and any night a storm could roll in during the summer.
Oh, dude, and it's been so hot, like bordering on 100 the past like week. So
Yeah.
we've just needed it so bad. Like
Like,
it's supposed to cool down after tonight, so I'm really happy.
and right now it's 8:10 p.m. out here on the West Coast and it's 101 outside.
Oh my god. Out at
Yeah.
night, dude. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's how we roll in
Crazy.
the desert in the summer. I'll say this, it's really rough for about 5 months here in Arizona, but the rest of the year is pretty beautiful. And in the winter, it gets cold enough to where I can put on a hoodie and my Dickies jacket and I can pretend
Nice.
that it's all right.
Pretend that you're
Um,
what? I'm sorry, you dipped out
it,
there for a second.
pretend I'm back in Alaska, in the
Okay.
middle of December. It's kind of nice.
Nice.
Yeah, well, and it's funny when we were talking about music biopics. It's like, well, Prince kind of already made his biopic because Purple Rain is sort
Yeah.
of autobiographical, and it also like it reminded me. I don't know if you're like a old film fan, but it kind of reminded me of Citizen Kane with like certain elements of the story as
I
well.
haven't seen
Uh,
Citizen Kane. I know it's a big blind spot for me.
It's you know what? I put it off for I think I bought that movie when I was in my 20s and I didn't watch it for like a year because I was like, no way it's gonna live up to the hype, right? It was like Long Legs. It was like, there's no
Yeah.
way this is gonna live up to the hype. And I sat down, I watched it by myself, and I was completely blown away at how ahead of its time it was. Like, I had no idea that a movie from I think it was like the late 30s when
I think so.
the special effects in there and the editing, everything is so seamless and so beautiful. I was totally blown away. At that point, I was like, man, Orson Welles was 26 when he did this, and
Dude, that's how I feel about Spielberg with Jaws. He was like 25, and it just makes me feel like
yeah.
such a fucking loser because it's like, what did I do at the age of 25 that was worth a
Well,
damn?
yeah, well, he went to film school and all those things, and then it's probably who
Comparing yourself to
film.
Spielberg, you're gonna feel bad. So it's
Sure, yeah,
yeah,
it's
I
tough.
don't.
You can't
It's
compare yourself to Spielberg.
it's just kind of funny to think about. Like, damn, dude,
Yeah,
you did
and I
that
mean,
when you were 25.
Jaws it's my favorite film of his. I'm not saying technically speaking, I'm sure he has films that would combat it, but I think Jaws is the greatest film of all time, at least that I've seen. So
That's your
it's got
number one
everything.
all time.
My number one all time, it's got everything. It's got, horror, thrills, drama, comedy. Uh, it's like every element of film is in there. And it like, but it doesn't feel cluttered. It just feels like this natural,
Yeah.
like human story. And I feel like it's the best looking shark out of the bunch.
Hmm.
Robert Shaw is just unbelievable as Quint. I mean, get out of here. Give him all the Academy Awards in the world. I'm still angry, even though I wasn't alive. Still angry that One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest beat it for Best Picture. But Cuckoo's Nest is a good movie. So
Yeah,
can't
if
be
you're
too
gonna
mad.
lose to something, I guess that's not a bad place to lose.
Not so
Dude,
bad. Not so bad.
I just watched it. Probably the 6th of July. I was able to get around to it because it's one of those that kind of
Yeah.
is like the annual summertime viewing.
Oh yeah.
I love Jaws as well. Bona fide masterpiece.
Yeah.
I don't think I have that deep attachment to it to put it as my number, in my top 10 even, but it's so hard when, I have all these other films that are like just a little bit more important. But yeah, Jaws
Yeah.
is like, no one can take anything away from Jaws, of course.
Yeah. I think, sometimes it's just like, like you were saying, like when you're born, or also just like maybe even when you see it, right? Because I probably saw Jaws for the first time. I was probably like 4 or 5. So it was
Yeah.
mid 80s. So the film was over 10 years old. And I just fell in love and got obsessed with sharks. But I've met people that watched Jaws for the first time when they were in their 20s and they thought it was cheesy and the shark looked bad. I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah. It's
So
interesting how that works.
if you had to pick, like, do you have a favorite film of all time? Do
It's
you have
hard.
to do like a top 5, floating top 5?
I'll give you a top 5. I'll say Halloween 78 because it's hard, right? I don't want to just say. I like to give you kind of like a multitude of genres.
I'm the same way, bro.
Because it's like, yeah, Halloween's probably my favorite horror movie of all time, but it's not my favorite
Mhm.
movie of all time. So I'll say Halloween. I'll say Before Sunrise, Richard Linklater. I'll say Color of Money, which is I really like playing pool. I'm a big pool guy,
Oh, sweet, man.
and that's like the fusion of my two favorite things is like movies and pool and like, you know,
Yeah.
billiards and stuff. I like to play a lot of 8-ball and stuff. So that's a really important movie to me. The fact that it's directed by Scorsese too is awesome. If you've never seen Color of Money, really good underrated Scorsese movie.
Yeah, I've never seen that one, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Paul Newman and Tom.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really good. And you don't even necessarily need to be into pool to like it, but if you are, it's just kind of just that little bit sweeter.
Yeah.
So God, I'll say those three, and I'll say like Paris, Texas. Have you ever seen that?
I've not.
That's a really good film as well. It stars Harry Dean Stanton, who is a great character actor. He's from
Love
things
him.
like, yeah, you know him. He's great. And then I guess I'll give you another horror. I'll say like Blair Witch Project.
The original?
Yeah, the original,
All
99.
right. That's
So
a good group.
yeah,
Do
I
you,
like I said, I like to watch a variety of films. I don't just watch horror, despite maybe what the channel name would suggest. So
well, that's the interesting thing about doing YouTube, right? Is like you kind of, you almost like want to carve out a niche that,
mhm.
usually stays with that. When I started doing things that horror is a big part of my life. And so, you start making that content, those are the people that show up. So you're like, well, if this is what the people want, so,
Yeah,
it's always fun to try other, little things out and stuff. But yeah, definitely it's, horror focus for sure. Now, you say you like billiards. Have you ever watched Pool Hall Junkies with Michael Rosenbaum and
I
Christopher
have.
Walken?
I have. I
That
have that on DVD over on the shelf over there.
that's like this low key badass underrated. It's like HBO Films movie from
Yeah,
like the
it's
early
like an HBO
2000s.
movie.
It's incredible. Like it is so damn good.
It's a lot of fun, dude. I've only seen it once. I need to watch it again. I think the fact that it's on my little DVD shelf and not with the rest of my Blu-rays, I overlook it perhaps
Mhm.
subconsciously. But no, I remember having a really good time with that one. Like they're doing like
Yeah.
the trick shots, and like there's his buddies that like are doing like the pranks and shit at the pool hall.
Yeah.
With like I can't. He's like, doesn't he do like a thing where he's like, I bet I can finish this beer or something before you do something. I don't know. You know what I'm
I
talking
I,
about.
I need to watch it again because I probably like I think I, rented it, burned a copy back in the
Mm,
early 2000s, probably watched it a couple times back then. I know there's that trick shot where like fucking hits the ball like the kind of like short way and he like catches it in his pocket or some crazy like he does some crazy trick shot that they actually got. Like somebody else set everything up and they
mm,
just told him what to do. And it
yeah,
was like the first take actually worked. So like the reaction that they all have was a genuine reaction because they didn't expect that Walken would actually nail the trick shot, but
that's awesome.
he was lucky enough to do it. And it is one of those cool, yeah, like Rosenbaum's character gets mixed in with like some sort of kind of gangster elements and everything. So there's that going on in there as well. I always really loved him. Like Smallville, even though it's definitely has its issues. I think like, him as Lex is one of the most interesting interpretations of that character I've ever seen. So got a lot of love for Rosenbaum. Love his podcast too.
His podcast is great. I was just gonna say that, and I also really like him in Urban Legend, which is
Yeah.
a really great movie. I never watched
Hmm.
Smallville. I feel like I probably would have liked it had I watched it back then in the day because
Hmm.
I like shows like that. I like that's crazy in the theater. I would have loved to have seen that. If they
Jamie's
ever
seen everything in the theater.
if they
That's
ever
the
do
running
a
joke.
if they ever do a re-release, I would love to go do that. That would be cool.
Yeah, they the you were talking when you were talking about how TV sucks on your channel
Mm,
and you mentioned Buffy, you talk about that like monster of the week. I would
yes.
say like the first couple seasons of Smallville sort of has that feel, especially the first season because it is sort of like a pilot season. So it is kind of like every monster is sort of like affected by the Smallville has like kryptonite pockets all over that people just haven't found. And there's
Hmm.
always like a character who has some negative attribute. They run into the kryptonite and it enhances that negative attribute and turns them into a monster. And then the lore grows from there as the seasons go on. And like Tom Welling becomes a way better actor. I think that's one of the really cool things about the show is he's like okay at the beginning. He has the look. And then as the
Yeah.
show goes on, you're like, shit, this guy like put in the time. Like this guy knows his stuff. And I love the idea of Lex and Clark being just like maybe a handful of years apart, you know, like almost the same age. I really like that dynamic because sometimes in the comics it seems like Lex is like, you know, 10 to 15 years older than Superman or
Yeah.
something like that, you know, or, you know, they just play him as a bit of an older guy. But, you know, like speaking of, you know, kind of what we were talking about earlier with like the redemptive villain thing, you know, at the beginning of that show, like Lex really wants to be friends with Clark. Clark doesn't really trust Lex because he knows of all the power he has. And Lex is like genuinely wants to be his friend. And then when he starts to get suspicious that maybe Clark has a secret that he's not telling him, he like kind of gets jealous about like, why won't you tell me the secret? Like we're good friends. And so you kind of see how they're like torn apart in a way that I had never seen before. So I thought the show was, you know, pretty fascinating in that regard.
I've always been interested by it, but that's the other thing too, man, is it's like that's a long show, right? I think it's got like
Oh yeah.
over
7 or 8 seasons or
yeah.
9 seasons or yeah.
I
Yep.
get intimidated, man. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
if this is gonna take me so long, and it's like I don't want to make that commitment. But I've always been
Mhm.
curious about Smallville. And like doesn't he sort of he doesn't start out as Superman as we know him. He like kind of develops his powers like season to season, right? Like he doesn't just have them all. And then I think I don't want to spoil Smallville or anything, but like I've absorbed some of this like through osmosis. So yeah, like just kind of the way it ends and stuff, you know, that's
Yeah.
it kind of
Yeah.
connects you to where he might be at in like the movie or something.
Yeah, I don't think he puts on a suit until like the last shot of the last episode or, you know, maybe
Yeah,
right towards the end does he even
that's
try on the
cool.
suit. Yeah, he's, you know, doesn't really know the limits of his powers and all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, Tom Welling does a great job of playing Clark just like a humble guy. And
Mhm.
the couple that play the parents, there's what's his face that was in Dukes of Hazzard, and then Annette O'Toole that was actually in Superman 4 as Lana Lang.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool. That's a nice
I
little
think she
time.
was Superman 4. I think so. Yeah. And so, and the parents are great in that, you know, like Clark has the best parents in the world. And I think that's a really cool thing about Superman. You know, when people say
That's like
Superman is,
important to his character that his parents are like, you know, super nurturing
yeah,
and just super supportive.
that's where his compass is because of his parents and because of the fact that he's, you know, the Boy Scout, like an American Boy Scout. You know, he's the American ideal. And
Right.
I think when people say that Superman's boring, I'm like, well, you know, I don't think so. I think the complicated thing about Superman is that he has to, you know, they play on this with in Smallville is that he has to deal with the fact that everyone he loves and cares about is going to die and he's going to live forever as like a god that's going to be heartbroken. Like him
Yeah.
and Wolverine to me kind of have that similar vibe where it's like the curse, the power is a curse in a sense as well, you
Yeah.
know.
I remember I was watching you were talking to Cecil Laird, is that his name?
Yeah.
You guys were talking about Superman. I tuned in for a good bit of that conversation. It was really interesting because the two of you seemed like you really knew your stuff, and
Oh man.
I'm a pretty casual Superman fan, so I find it fascinating to listen to people who know more about it than I do because it actually gives me a deeper appreciation for the subject.
Yeah, for sure. And Cecil, like he is, dude, he has a whole storage unit full of comics. I mean, he has thousands and thousands.
Oh,
So
that's
like
badass.
I've picked up on things here and there, but this guy is like an encyclopedia and just, you know, has massive love for Superman. And he's what's really cool about Cecil is he, you know, he's always writing and creating and everything like that. So he doesn't have like one little kind of pigeonhole that you can put him in. Like, you know, the things that he loves about Superman, he doesn't want to necessarily see in other characters, but he wants to
Yeah,
see them in Superman. So it's like you do want the patriotic feel and like the guy that's gonna lift up the people that are lowest in his community and all that kind of stuff that, you know, it seems like in the newer Superman movies they didn't really want to touch that stuff. And I'm all for different interpretations. I think that's kind of the cool thing, and one of the cool things about comic books is like, you know, a writer takes over a character and they're going to put their own spin on it.
yeah, and
And
they can have
then
their run, and then when
yep.
it's over, they can do something different. That's what's really
Yeah,
cool about that.
and then they're gonna reboot it. It's funny, like when people are always like, "How many Spider-Man reboots are we gonna have?" And it's like, well, if you read the comics, this wouldn't be new. Like you wouldn't be bothered. You would
This
actually
is the
want,
nature of comic books is that
yeah,
there's all these different iterations.
yeah,
It's sort of necessary, no?
yeah. You almost want a comic book character on film to be rebooted every 2 or 3 movies. Like, why the hell
Yeah.
not? You know?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm someone who's sort of fallen out of love with superhero films lately.
Oh yeah.
Um I've always kind of I've enjoyed them, but 2019 really did feel like a closing of the book
Hmm.
with like Endgame and stuff,
Yeah.
and it just kind of like the genre in general just felt like okay, I think I'm good. I don't watch a lot of the Marvel, like we were talking about it earlier, the shows. I think I only watched WandaVision. I haven't really watched anything else as far as the shows go.
Hmm.
And I watched like, Thor Ragnar like Love and Thunder. Love and Thunder.
Hmm.
Really bad. You know, I didn't bother with like the Marvels,
Yeah.
I thought like Black Panther Wakanda Forever was like okay, like they did the best they could with the hand they were dealt.
Yeah.
But like I'm not interested in an Ironheart show
Hmm.
or, an Agatha show.
Yeah.
Like 4 years after WandaVision, like dude,
Yeah.
like this is so irrelevant by now. Like what are you doing,
Yeah.
dude? This should have came out like at the very latest a year after WandaVision. So it's just crazy. But
Yeah, it's gotten a
yeah.
bit like I think movie studios, like everyone's got like an agenda, and I think like the trick is finding a creative way to like get your point across instead of being ham-fisted and beating people over the head with it. Like
Mm,
because I think that you can, if you want to get like, there's certainly like tons of movies out there that make political points or sociological points, and they do it in a way that's kind of, there's an undercurrent of it. So you have
yeah,
to sort of be looking for it, or you have to like pick up on it. They're not like straight up shouting it in your face. And I
that's
feel
what I
like
like.
the subtlety's kind of gone. The nuance isn't really there. It
Yeah,
seems like they're straight up just trying to brainwash people with movies, like to some degree. And also they're trying to like sort of right the ship on fandom, and it's like, man, you've already have fans, like they're waiting in the wings, that they want to see things, and you're trying to say, no, you guys aren't good enough for fans. We want to like create this new group of fans that we bring in, and it's like, well, good fucking luck. Like, good
yeah,
luck,
yeah.
and then
It's hard, man. Good.
and then you blame the people that don't go see the movie when you straight up told them that you're not making the movie for them. So why are they going to go?
Yeah, I have. This seems like a Disney thing.
Hmm.
I don't want to shout them out primarily as the sole committers of these sins, but yeah, Disney, like what they've done with Star Wars is like I've made my peace with the fact that Star Wars is no longer for me. It's
Yeah,
just
me
not.
too.
They're just
Yep.
not making it for me anymore, and that's something that I had
Mhm.
to accept.
Yep.
I'm open minded for a good superhero film. Like if one comes out and it's great, I'll go see it. Like I'm not over superheroes like in like blanket statement. Like I'm just not over superheroes. Like I'm willing to watch good movies, and that's the
Mhm.
thing that
Yeah.
like I think Marvel kind of got really complacent, and they were just like, oh, well, everything we put out is a hit, and for a while it
Yeah.
was. Some were definitely better than others, but by and large, yeah, now it's just like, dude, you really got to do a lot to win me back because I could not be more checked out. And
Yeah.
and what you were
But
saying about the like the agendas, I think some of the best things are the ones where you kind of get what you take out of them. Like you can watch something and just consume it on like a base level where you're like, oh, that was entertaining, that was good. But then the more you decide you want to engage with it, the more you can kind of take out of it, and you're like, oh, there's actually a
yeah.
lot going on under the surface here. So, and that's not even just with with that kind of thing, like just in general, I like those are my favorite thing. Like horror films do that really well, you know, a lot of different things. So
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna go see Deadpool and Wolverine though, right?
oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm not like incredibly excited about it, but I have a reason to believe that it's probably going to be a really fun time at the movie theater.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go check it out. Like that's just kind of where I'm at with it. Like I can really take or leave it. Like if it seems like I'm gonna like it, like the trailer for Captain America, I'm not really moved
I
by
didn't even
that.
watch it. I didn't
Yeah,
even watch
yeah.
it.
So like I watched it
That's
because I
how
was
checked out I
curious.
am.
Yeah, I'm like
Yeah.
I'm at the point where I'm like, maybe I'll watch this trailer, maybe I won't. And then it's like if I
Yeah.
do watch it, I'm like curious about, you know, how big of a train wreck it's gonna be. So I
Well,
don't
yeah, I
know.
mean, the at the end of the first episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier or whatever, when he like tells the politicians to like he uses the whole do better thing.
Oh, I've seen
I'm
that
just
like
like,
meme to death.
I mean, that is the most like you're saying nothing. And we live in
Yeah.
this really odd time where people say things like just saying. And when people say just saying, they're saying nothing. They want you to do the thinking for them. They want you
Yeah.
to finish like to do the thinking. And then when they say something like do better, it means I don't know what to do and I have no ideas. I just want you to clean up the mess for me. And it's all your fault if you don't. I don't even have it's like none of the responsibility is mine or anyone else's. It's all the suits in Washington just have to
Yeah.
figure it out. It's like
It's such
it's kind of
lazy writing is what it is, man.
yeah, but it's also like I guess I can't blame them because I think a lot of the people they're trying to reach are people that actually say those things. Like
Yeah.
they just say like do better, and it's like what the hell does do better mean? Like
Yeah, like
like if we want a better world, what does do better
yeah.
mean? You can't just say do better and mic drop because you're
They
mic
want to
dropping with like nothing.
they want to
You would get
criticize, but they don't want to give any ideas as to how to improve anything.
yeah, that's why people when they run for office, regardless of what their affiliations are, they actually go out there and say the things they believe in. Like no one that runs for office is like do better, drop the mics, and then wins the election. Like it's just
Yeah, no,
no.
you
You
actually
have to
have to
explain
give
yourself.
ideas, yeah, which
Yeah, so it's just
seem to be in short supply over in Hollywood. So
yeah. Yeah, and so when it comes to like the new Captain America, I'm just like, well, I bet this is going to be some sort of movie that like tries to make me feel bad for like the country and body I was born into. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. But something like
yeah,
Deadpool and Wolverine is like I think that's like the way that the comic book movies need to go. And I think even like horror movies too to a certain degree, it's like let's take some chances. Like that's why Marvel worked is because they took chances at the beginning. Not many, I don't know how many people know this that weren't into comic books before. I'm sure the people in the chat are a bit more hip with it. But like Iron Man was like a friggin' second or third tier comic character. Like when I
yeah,
was a kid, no one wanted to be Iron Man. You wanted to be Spider-Man, you wanted to be Captain America or Wolverine or whatever. So starting out their whole Marvel run with Iron Man and having it not only be a massive hit, but like a super entertaining movie that made you fall in love with the character, even if you had no reference, that's a chance. And I feel like they need to get back to that. Like Deadpool and Wolverine doing an R-rated film with those guys and having it be under Disney's umbrella instead of Fox, that's a chance, you
yeah.
know?
It's their only movie they're doing this year, which is great. You know, like
Yeah.
where as opposed to the 4, I think they would put out a year, and it's like
Mhm.
that just becomes so
You
tiresome.
you're eating into your own profits at that
Yeah,
point,
yeah,
right?
you're
You're
just
kind of like,
cannibalizing your own brand, and it's like
yep.
give people time to miss it. You know, I
Mhm.
think it's okay to you know, let people want something again. Like
Yeah.
leading like the hype for The Force Awakens was, you know, and like same with the prequels. Like there was a long gap between
Mhm.
each trilogy, which was like and they're just not willing to do that anymore because they don't make money that way. So it's like I understand why they do it, but it's like you got to find that middle ground where you can manufacture desire and like interest in
Mhm.
these characters again, whatever the
Mhm.
franchise is. Just give it, just pump the brakes and stop with the fucking all these Disney Plus shows that I will never like. I'll just never watch. It's like
Mhm.
you know, and I don't. I don't know. The people who are super Marvel fans are gonna watch all of this stuff, and like that's awesome. I'm glad that like people have that like a thing that they're into, and they get so much of this content that they enjoy. But like for me,
Mhm.
it's got to be a quality product. Like I'm not just gonna blindly support something just because like I'm into it. Like I'm gonna be critical. I'm gonna be most critical of the things that I'm like a fan of. You know what I mean? So
Yes, preach, brother. I feel the same way. I feel like you have to be critical about the things that you like. It doesn't mean that you don't like them. It just means that you're thinking. And I think
yeah,
like a
yeah.
smarter audience is going to be more critical, and a smarter audience is going to make sure that the art is better and that the art gets better, incrementally, right? And I think you had meant I think when you were saying that about like make people miss things, um I think there was one of your videos that I was watching where you talk about that. I don't know if it's the Halloween ranking or if it was something else, but you talk about the idea of, yeah, taking that break and letting people, want more,
It
creating
might
that
have been the
space.
TV episode because like uh I talk a bit about how with shows the cool thing about the filler episodes is that they allow you to kind of live in that world for a lengthy amount of
Mhm.
time, and like perhaps you get a whole episode where this side character who's always been like the butt end of a joke is now the main character of this episode,
Mhm.
and it serves to kind of flesh out the world a lot more.
Yeah.
And then but
Yeah.
but then what you also get is breaks between seasons were they were long, but they weren't, years and years, the way they are now. So it's just long enough to make you miss the product or whatever it is. But and then it's also not too long to where you just lose interest because the break was too long.
Yeah.
And now you're on to
Exactly.
something else.
And I think we're there like in horror. I think we're there with a character like Michael Myers. And they're always, they're working in the background on Halloween stuff, but I feel like with Halloween, they're doing of course they're planning a TV show. Everyone
Yeah.
is doing a TV show now. And
Yeah.
then I would imagine we're going to get a new movie on the 50th anniversary, or at least one announced, right around then. But I'm one of the folks that like I would really like to see a TV show that's sort of like each season is like almost like a mini series, and it's like an anthology where they sort of like they pick up on a dead end. So maybe we do get like an actual sequel to Halloween 4 and they bring Danielle Harris back and it's a legacy sequel with her. But it's only 6 to 8 episodes. Once that's done, it's done. It's contained. It's not connected to anything else. So
Yeah.
instead of getting this drawn out story, we get these like stories that are just by themselves. Even bring Josh Hartnett back and do a true sequel to H2O, and then it's
That
done,
would be cool.
And then so, but I know they're not going to do that because of taking chances, and those are pretty big chances. So they're probably just going to be Michael. They're going to bring Michael back, and there's going to be some of the fans that are going to love it, and some folks probably like you or me, you and me, that are like, oh, I just needed a little more of a break to get excited again.
Yeah, it's like Michael he's got his time in the sun, and I could stand to go a couple more years before I see anything from him.
Yeah.
Um it's Freddie and Jason who we
Oh yeah.
desperately need something from. And
Yeah.
like the audience is just absolutely bristling at the possibility. Like anytime anything Jason related comes out,
Yeah. Oh
we
yeah.
get excited because it's like, is this it? Is this the final domino that needs to fall before we can finally get something?
There's
And
been a
like
lot of cock teasing going on with Jason.
so much edging, and it's like with Jay and when Freddy, it's like there's just virtually nothing. It's like a
Yeah.
tumbleweed blowing around.
Yeah.
So it's about the properties too, like
Mhm.
you know. But with Michael, it's like I don't think we could ever get an anthology now, because the whole
Yeah.
reason that didn't work was because people wanted Myers. And that was in the
Mhm.
80s. They didn't have the decades of attachment to the character that we have now. So if it didn't work then, it's definitely not going to work now, in my opinion,
Mhm.
because what's to separate that from just another, like, it's just called Halloween, but it's just like supernatural, unrelated stories, like Season of the
Yeah.
Witch adjacent stories. Like, I don't know. I think you need Michael in order to like he's become synonymous with the franchise. So
well, and you could still have Michael, but it would be each story wouldn't be connected. So you bring back that H4, you bring back the H2O,
you bring like that version of them of Michael and this version of Michael.
Yeah.
But no, I know that idea. No, I think it's actually that would be fun. But
like for the hardcore fans, it would be great. But not everyone's a hardcore fan. So I totally get why the chances wouldn't be taken, and I guess that's why. You know, some folks are bringing up fan films here in the chat. I'm a huge fan film fan, and I think it's because, you know, it really is driven by the fans themselves. And so you get these ideas that people have been wanting forever, but a studio would just never make. Like, are you familiar? Have you checked out Never Hike Alone? Those movies, and then Dylan's New Nightmare. Have you seen that?
Yeah. So that's how I know Cecil, is because he's the Dylan's New Nightmare guy, right?
Yeah.
And then I love what Dave and Bruce are doing with It's Me, Billy. I'm super excited for that. And what's so cool about it is that people are able to do these with such good production value now. Even some of the, I guess you'd call them, I don't want to diminish anyone's work, but there is like, you know, there's tiers as far as what people are able to put into these films. And even the ones that aren't able to have a lot of money in them, they look great, and you can tell that the people really are passionate about the property. So like I think we're kind of in like a golden age of fan films, honestly. They're really they're fascinating because it's like you can tell that there's not any studio sort of boardroom like decision making going on. These are ideas that are coming straight from fans. And it serves to highlight that, more often than not, fans are the ones who know what other fans would like to see with these properties, you know. And it's like that's what's so infuriating about some of these properties, is because it's like, no, like that's not what we want to see. Like, why would we want that? Like, give us this. Like, I'm a big I really like Resident Evil, and the Resident Evil films with like Mila Jovovich are like so far removed from anything happening in the games.
It's so wild, isn't it? They didn't remake. I mean, they bring in some characters, but it's like, man, they just went and created their own thing.
Yeah, it's like they have the characters, but it's like a fucking crazy. It's like they ripped up the scripts of all the different games and like threw them all together, and like and it's like this person's interacting with this thing. But then so they had that Welcome to Raccoon City movie from a couple years back that was supposed to be the plots of the first and second game. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be cool. Like this seems like it's more faithful to the games. And it's like, but then that movie was kind of a bummer. But then they did that Netflix TV show where it's like Wesker is the protagonist and it's about his two cloned daughters. And it's like, dude, nobody who is a Resident Evil fan wants to see that. So it's like, it's so frustrating because it's like, dude, the blueprint is right there. Just adapt this game. And then when you're done that, adapt this game. 3, 4, they're numbered. It's really easy. You just go in order, and you know, it's like just do that, you know?
Well, they were this close to having Romero do the first movie, and they're like, oh, but you wrote a movie that's like actually like the first game. And it's like, you went and hired George Romero to do a zombie movie in a mansion. You know, he already kind of made this movie. So why don't you just get the hell out of the way and let the guy make the damn movie?
Dude,
you know?
Could you imagine if we lived in a world where that movie existed? That would be so awesome.
It would have been amazing. And then maybe we would have gotten a series that followed because, I mean, Resident Evil 2 it's all right there. You know, and then even Resident Evil 4, which is one of my favorite video games of all time.
Dude, same. I fucking love Resident Evil 4. That is my favorite game of all time.
Like, aside from, it's the only like modern game, and I know it's 20 years old, but I consider modern everything after like the 16-bit era is like modern. So it's the only game in that era that I would consider a favorite game of mine, because I'm a Nintendo, Genesis, Super Nintendo kind of guy. So it's all like Castlevania other than Resident Evil 4.
Gotcha.
Which the Castlevania shows have been great. But Resident Evil 4, dude, they're really good. They're really good.
Those are good.
Like if you like anime and you like blood and you like any of the Castlevania games, like there's plenty of fan service, but they create their own story, but it's all true to what you see in the game as well. So I don't know how familiar you are with the games, but I think you'd have fun either way. But
I was like a N64 guy growing up, so like that was my era. So I really missed out on a lot of like Castlevania and Metroid and like all those old school NES games and stuff of that generation.
If you have a modern system, I think there's something out there called the Castlevania Collection, and you can get it has like all the original Nintendo, and I think there's a Genesis game that was exclusive to Sega, and then a couple of the games from the Super Nintendo as well. Those are really fun platforming games. They're extremely challenging, but especially as a horror guy, like that was one of the things, like as a kid, like as a 6-year-old playing Castlevania, I'm playing Castlevania, watching Jaws and checking out books about like universal horror monsters, like from my school library as like a first grader. I was a wild kid.
Dude. Yeah, I had a similar upbringing, but just with the 94 versions of all those things.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's great. I love how those things kind of, it's like they are represented through every generation. That's the cool thing about, pop culture in a sense. And I still think that even though horror is part of pop culture, it's kind of like off to the side. It's not so much, mainstream. Even we think of Michael and Jason and Freddy as like mainstream in our horror minds, but you still meet people that are like, I've never seen any of those movies,
Yeah, they know who they are, but they maybe haven't seen them. But
yeah.
Then you have like people like Pennywise, who I think really have like sort of breached the zeitgeist, and like that's like a new like those It movies from 2017 and 2019, like they were like this generation's like gateway into horror films, basically. They were Halloween for me growing up.
Yeah. And like the Saw movies, and it's like it's cool that even though I think I've only seen the first few Saw movies, but I will always be a fan of a long running horror series, because I think that's like what keeps the genre like relevant, and it's what brings new creators into the genre as well. So it's like I'm one of those people that like maybe I might be picky sometimes about my taste, but it's like I like bring it all in, like throw everything at the wall. If it sticks for you, cool. If it doesn't, that's cool too. Like it's successful for a reason, Like I didn't like the first Terrifier movie, but I thought the second one was great, even though it was about 20 years long.
Yeah. I think of movies like Megan, which is like so not really for me. I'm a bit, I don't want to say I'm too old for Megan. Obviously, anyone can enjoy Megan, but it's not what I look for in a horror film.
Yeah.
But Megan is going to be some, 12-year-old kid's introduction to horror, and it's going to potentially turn them into a lifelong fan of the genre because they watched a movie like Megan. So it's like, give us all that shit, dude. Like, because that's how you create new fans. So
it's going to be the movie that makes them go back and see all the classics that came before it,
Exactly.
And the only thing you hope for is that they can take in the classics. And like one thing that Dave always says on his channel that I've done probably throughout my whole life is like, when you watch a movie that's from like an early era, or earlier era than when you were from, I just sort of try to put myself in that space. So I don't judge a movie like Jaws or The Exorcist or Citizen Kane by like today's standards. I try to think of like, what was this like when it came out? Because I just think that's what you do with art.
It's very important. Yeah. It almost seems like it goes without saying, but you'd be surprised. So it does feel like something that you kind of need to remind yourself, and it's like, that's what makes watching some of those older films a little harder for me, because sometimes I'm not willing to put myself in that mental space for so long, and maybe leave my phone in the other room so I can fully enjoy and appreciate the art, because I don't want to do a film a disservice and kind of half-ass it. I want to really like give myself all to this movie, so
sometimes you have to be in the right headspace for something like that, and you kind of have to prime yourself for it. You have to, the night that I decided to watch Citizen Kane, it was like, okay, am I ready for this?
Exactly, man. And it's like, you don't need to do that nearly as much if you're watching House of Wax from 2005. It's like, just to kind of use that example again, it's like, you know, there's no prep time needed for that, but you can just kind of pop it in and off you go.
Absolutely.
Especially if it's a film you've seen already, that obviously helps a lot. But you know, even if it's
Yeah.
not, yeah,
I'm a big rewatcher because I like
same.
seeing, you know, how I feel about it like a second time or just like a 20th time, whatever. And you know, so you said same, so it sounds like you are too. Are now you saw, you know, earlier you had mentioned Long Legs, and
Yeah,
I, you know, obviously I don't want to give anything away because I want everyone in the chat to be able to see the movie and have, you know, a good truthful experience with it. But is that, like, to me, that's one of those movies where like I can't stop thinking about it. I really want to watch it again now that I know how it all shakes out. Did you get a similar vibe from that, or you sort of,
I'm
you
dying
know,
to see it again. Yeah,
yeah.
I really want to, and I want to make a video on it, sort of like my review, but I feel like I need to see it again, and I just don't know when I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to get the time to do so. So I might have to do my review without having seen it again, and just what's honestly what I'm more interested in about with Long Legs is the rather than trying to like dissect it and everything. Like, there's people who are going to be better at that than I am. I'm more interested in
Mm-hmm.
like discussing sort of the reception to it and like the expectations that people had going
Yeah.
into it and like the marketing, like that stuff's been super interesting.
Yeah.
Because I
The,
found it to be incredibly effective. Like that is how at my age and for the level of desensitized that I am, that's how you scare me in a horror film. That
mm-hmm.
is by making me deeply anxious and unsettled,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not going to do it with jump scares or, you know, sawing somebody in half. You're going to do it with a film like that. Like that's what's
Mm-hmm.
effective for me now.
Yep.
So and then it's very interesting because you've got a lot of people saying that it wasn't scary at all,
Hmm.
and it serves to highlight how subjective horror is,
Yeah.
and how bad some of these marketing campaigns can be on the discourse side of things, because obviously they've been very effective at getting people to see the movie. Anyone that
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to who's seen it, their theater was packed. Was
Yeah.
yours pretty packed?
Yeah, and my wife and I went on opening night. We went to the earliest show we could, and I would imagine the next
Mm,
show was probably even more packed because we just wanted to go see it, come home, review it because it was a, you know, a work night and everything. So,
right.
not only was the theater packed, but everyone was fucking quiet, dude. Like no one was
Dude,
effing around with the goddamn nachos. No nachos. Popcorn, okay. I can deal with popcorn in the theater. I
yeah,
know it's noisy, but it's a friggin' movie. I'm not going to be, you know, crazy about popcorn, but your damn nachos, get the hell out of here in a movie theater.
that's psycho behavior. Dude, I have to talk about this because back in May, I saw The Strangers Chapter 1 on a weekend, um, around 7 o'clock. Same thing as Long Legs for me. And my theater was packed. Now, I'm I wasn't super excited for Strangers Chapter 1. I had heard it was actually pretty bad.
Yeah.
So what wound up happening in that showing was everyone was talking throughout the entire film and making fun of the movie and actually laughing. And it was actually kind of a fun experience because the movie was so bad that the only way to salvage the experience was to kind of have this communal thing with everyone in the theater where, you know, one person would say something and everyone would laugh. And it actually saved the experience, where normally I would hate that.
Yeah.
So when I'm sitting down for Long Legs, I'm like, man, this is a packed fucking theater. Like, I really hope this is a respectful audience. You know, I don't want to have a repeat of Strangers.
Yeah.
And then, dude, from frame one, it's like
Yeah.
it's silent, and I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
thank God, dude. It was one of the
Yeah.
most. My theater was packed, and everyone was silent, and they were just. I was just so grateful because I was like, God, like, and it's a testament to how good the fucking movie is that the fact that
Yeah.
there is no time for horsing around in Long
Mm-hmm.
Legs. Like, it locks you in, and
Yeah.
I was just so it made the experience so good. I was so grateful because I
Yeah.
get nervous in big theaters like that with lots of people.
Oh, for sure. And I think the marketing was, you know, you had mentioned that earlier. I think that's like a master class in how you market that kind of movie. Now, you can't market every movie like that. Like, because the movie has mystery about it and because it's supposed to exist like in our world,
Hmm.
whether or not there may be like, supernatural elements going on, it has to exist in our world. So I felt like the fact that people didn't really know what the story was going to be makes them shut the hell up and pay attention because they're interested by all the imagery. And they, it's almost like a dream. Like you wake up from a dream and you try to explain it to somebody, and you're like, like it makes sense in your head, but you can't really explain it to them. I felt like that's
Yeah.
kind of how the marketing was, where it's like, oh, I'm getting just enough to make me see that number one, this movie is beautifully shot. Like the
Oh,
way
dude.
that the camera moves and the way the camera is placed, like Osgood Perkins definitely picked up some stuff from his dad, who clearly picked up some stuff from Hitchcock, because this movie has such a Hitchcockian vibe. I think the way that they build tension with camera placement, with blocking, with camera movement, with symmetry, almost like the way that Kubrick or even a guy like, some of it reminded me of like the way Wes Anderson would shoot a movie if he did
Yeah.
something like that. Like there's this
Yeah.
really beautiful like style to it. And I like that, to me was like, that's what makes that kind of movie immersive to me. And then also, I mean, the music's great. Of course, the sound design's gorgeous. Going back and forth from like the kind of like looking at a slideshow kind of frame to then pulling out into the
Yeah.
full frame. And then
That aspect ratio. Yeah.
yeah, and then the credits, man, almost like gave me like, I felt like the credits with the stark red and the black titles.
Yeah. And then they were
Every
going in reverse.
Yeah,
Oh,
well, and
at
every
the
time
end. Yeah.
even the credits at the beginning, every time they would
Mm.
flash to a new credit, a card of credits, I was still seeing the other people's names like in my, it was like playing with my mind in a way that I felt like the movie was saying, we're kind of hypnotizing you to get you in the mood for this movie. It was a really cool, like the intro song of an album that's like ethereal and spacey, that just sort of locks you into a totally different world. And then that way you're immersed in that world. You shut the hell up, you pay attention. Not many films show the patience
Yeah.
that Longlegs showed. And I think it paid off. And I hope that, I don't want to see a bunch of copycats, but I just hope that people can take some of those elements and, up and coming filmmakers can sort of see how some of that stuff can work. And maybe they can work some of those elements into what they do. You never want people to change their style completely. But when somebody like Osgood Perkins has the style that he has after only making a few films, I mean, to me, this guy is like one of the best filmmakers going on now. And have you ever seen Not Another Teen Movie?
I have back when I was young. Yeah.
He's in Not Another Teen Movie. Everyone knows him from Legally Blonde, but he's like the uninterested guy is what they call him. It's like when
Oh
the
yeah.
dirty girl that bangs everyone, that talks about how she wants somebody to poop on her chest and all that. She like goes up to Osgood Perkins, who's sitting in the hallway at the party, and she's like, "Hi, my name's so and so," and he's like, "I know, we just had sex 5 minutes ago," and he like walks away.
I haven't
and,
seen
and
that
I'm
in
like
so long.
blowing my yeah, it's blowing my mind that I'm like, that's the guy that made like, arguably the greatest like, mainstream horror movie that we've seen in a really long time. Um,
Have you seen his other film, The Black Coat's Daughter?
Dude, I haven't seen any of his other films, and I'm like, I need to get on that so damn quick, because I've heard the Black Coat's Daughter is just like there's some similar elements, and that it's hovering like just around as good as Longlegs, like the
Yeah,
quality and the experience.
I would say Longlegs is better, but The Black Coat's Daughter is really good. It's got that same sort of impending doom sort of feeling, just
Mhm.
dread is the best way I can use to describe it. But this is him, like he's ascended to another level in Longlegs, and yeah. But Black Coat's Daughter is a bit quieter of a film, I would say, but
Okay.
it's very eerie. It's very tension filled. I would really recommend that one.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I have to see everything he's done at this point, because it's just, I love when so, sometimes there's happy accidents in filmmaking. Sometimes when you're making a film, or, like I've spent a lot of time playing music, so recording music, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you just go about it in like, well, this is just the way we do things. It's kind of like paint by numbers production, you know, and I know that
Yeah.
happens sometimes in filmmaking as well. But when I see a movie like, you know, even just seeing the teaser trailers for Longlegs, I'm like, man, everything looks like it has such purpose here. Everything is so deliberate. You get the feeling that like every spot where they chose to put the camera was like thought about for hours, like that they poured over every detail. And whether or not they did, I don't know, but I love seeing that represented in a film. That's one of those things that that I saw in that teaser trailer for It's Me, Billy Chapter 2, where I'm
Mm.
like, damn, dude, Dave McRae and Bruce Dale, they are creating these shots that just seem so deliberate and so cool. That's the kind of stuff that you know, my stage in life kind of gets me going when it comes to horror. Is just
Oh
like,
yeah.
show me you're thinking about it, you know?
Dude, yes. Tell me you just show me that you care, you know, is what
Yeah.
I want. Like I was actually watching a bunch of Osgood Perkins interviews and he talks about the how everything in his movies comes from him and is in some way related to his real world experiences and things that he's, you know, feels strongly about. And
Hmm.
it's like you can tell he says something to the effect of you can tell when a horror film is made from a place of dishonesty where whoever's making it perhaps has no the script isn't in a personal level, you know, firing, you know, and it's not going to be a one-to-one adaptation of their life, but it's drawn from those inspirations of your own life experience. And you can tell when you're watching a horror film that is made from a place of like emotional dishonesty is more or less to the
Hmm.
point of what he was saying. And when I
Yeah.
was sitting down for Long Legs, you know, you know that feeling you get when you're sitting down to watch a new movie for the first time and you're like, "Oh, this is going to be really good." Like you just kind of
Yeah.
have a feeling like you kind of know that you're in
Hmm.
for something special, and like that's what Long Legs was. And like you, if you're lucky, you get maybe one or two of those a year. You know,
Yeah.
they don't really come around often. Like
Hmm.
I love horror films, but I'm lucky if I have two of them in my top 10 at the end of the year because I'm very critical and I've seen a
Yeah.
good amount of them at this point, and you know, I know what I like and what I don't like, and I've seen so many that, you know, you really have to stand apart from the crowd in order to really get like that top rating
Hmm.
from me specifically. Yeah, I can only speak to my own experience, but for
Oh
me,
yeah, absolutely.
I feel like it's not an uncommon point of view. I feel like people probably do agree with me to some extent. If you love horror and you know you really care about the genre, like I'm not just gonna go out and see Night Swim and you know Imaginary just because I love horror films. You know, if I hear
Yeah.
something's dog shit, I'm not gonna waste my time. I have better ways
Yeah.
to spend my time. So
Yeah, I'm the same way because I don't consider myself like, even though I do reviews on my channel, you know, probably similar to you. It's like I don't want to be a YouTube reviewer. I think there are so many
yes,
great people out there that do that already, and they
yeah,
do it very well. And I don't need to try to carve into that. But if there's something I'm passionate about or something I've been looking forward to, then absolutely I want to
yeah,
review it. And I think like a lot of people have, maybe even if they don't articulate it, or maybe if it hasn't like, you know, occurred to them. I do think people, you know, have that sort of, you know, discernible interest in like opinion on films, even if they, you know, never say anything. Maybe they're just never asked about like what they thought, or, you know, what they didn't like or did like. But yeah, I mean, when you compare something like what Osgood Perkins is doing to, you know, the like a traditional slasher series, you do sort of see, you know, you get the good entries, but then you get the entries where they're like, well, they just had to put out a movie this year, you know, so they
yeah,
went and put out,
yeah,
you know, it's like we got this movie, like just because it had to be made, so they hired a guy. This guy
yeah.
didn't even want to make horror movies, they just brought somebody in. Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
it's you know, as we're audience members are smart. Like people who watch movies and do and watch a lot of movies are smart, and like they know enough to know when they're watching a good movie and when they're not, and when they're watching
Yeah.
something that you know was made with passion. And it's like,
Hmm.
and I don't, I some filmmakers treat the audience and they acknowledge the fact that they are intelligent people. And then there's movies where you watch them and you're like, "Oh, you think I'm a fucking idiot." And like
Yeah.
those are the ones that I can't stand because it's like, dude, have some respect for me and my intelligence and have some respect for you and
Yeah.
take it, go out on a limb and assume that the whoever's watching your movie is going to be able to intelligently engage with it on a slightly higher level than than you're giving yourself credit for.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think, yeah, you have to give the benefit of the doubt to the audience, you know?
Yeah,
You
and
you
that's
have
what
to you
Long
have to
Legs
assume.
does,
Yeah.
to kind
Yeah,
of
and
circle
even
back.
I heard that, like, you know, because everyone's like, "Oh, it's long he's called long legs because of this or that," and I get like, I read something where he said he just thought it sounded cool. Like,
That's
that's
the other
why
thing.
like,
Yeah,
so that's great, though. That's the cool thing about art is, like, once he puts it out there, yeah, now it's got there's a whole narrative about why he's called long legs, and everyone's putting out their different theories of why, whereas the guy that wrote the movie is like, "Yeah, I just like the way it sounded." You know, like,
yeah.
that's an added layer of benefit to a film like this.
Like, when I do eventually make my review about the movie, I'm not so much interested in, like, dissecting it and, like, why do you think this happened? And it's like, I don't think that this particular film anyway was kind of made for that. I feel like you kind of just have to accept it and kind of watch it on its own terms and just kind of
Mhm.
enjoy the things that, you are given, because a problem people are having with the movie is the ending. That's where sort of the divisiveness is coming into play with this
Hmm.
movie. And
Oh, wow. I
a
don't
lot
understand. Yeah, I
well,
couldn't
there
understand why.
there are people who think it's a little too open-ended and it doesn't explain enough, and they kind of want to know exactly what's going on. And like, and then there's
Yeah.
I dude, I have Twitter, but I deleted it from my homepage on my phone, so to kind of remove the desire to scroll, and it's actually worked
Mm.
really well. So I really don't go on Twitter anymore at all. But whenever some occasionally I will, and I was seeing some long legs discourse, and someone was like, "I want a prequel about Nicolas Cage and his role as Longlegs and like how he became this character." And I'm like, dude, you are not. Look, I don't want to tell someone that there's a right and a wrong way to engage with art, but like, that's so not the point. Like, that's
Yeah.
like, and I would fucking hate that, and that would never happen. Hopefully, God willing,
Like,
like,
if that were an interesting idea, that would have been in the original in the movie.
yeah,
Like,
that's just
I'm
it's so bizarre to me.
to me, prequels are just like, get them out of my face. Like,
Yeah,
I already know the interesting things about these characters. I don't want to see like, oh, what were they like before they got their special hat and their ball. Like Furiosa, I'm like, what the fuck is this bullshit? Like, isn't it far more interesting to like, I want what happens next after Mad Max Fury Road? What is it like for Furiosa trying to,
yeah,
you know, now she's the leader? Is it, what if being the leader is really tough? What if she finds out that she starts doing some things that Immortan Joe did just because that's the only way you can keep order? So I think
yeah,
it's way more interesting to have like kind of an Animal Farm story of like, what do you become when you get put into power? Like, do you just become the evil that you just replaced? But instead we get this like, this is how she gets her arm, and I'm just like, get the fuck out of here with this. Like, this is so boring. Like, you know, same with like Solo and even the Star Wars prequels. I was like, George, like, we already know the most interesting parts about these characters. Like, the most interesting thing about Anakin is that he was Darth Vader and that his son's love saved his life and his soul. Like, you
yeah,
ain't gonna get more interesting than that, especially not him and Padme laying around in a
yeah.
field, you
And then,
know?
with that, it's like, 3 is notoriously the one he was most excited to make because that's
Yeah,
the specific story he wanted to tell.
sure.
So
Yeah.
1 and 2 kind of felt like necessary, just to stepping stones to get to that point. Um,
Hmm.
but that's just the Star Wars thing. But yeah, like, I really liked the First Omen though from this year. So there are exceptions to the rule, but yeah, by and large,
Sure.
I don't love prequels. You've really got to, because the problem with so many prequels, you bring up Solo. The funny thing about that is it's like every noteworthy thing that ever happened in his life all happened in the span of like a week. He meets
Yeah.
Chewbacca, he gets his name, he gets the Falcon, he makes the Kessel Run.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, like, you boiled the whole character down into like every significant event of his entire life happened in one
Yeah.
week or whatever the timeline is. It's like, dude, that's not. It's just so lazy, and it's like that's not
Yeah.
interesting to me at all. So, but
Yeah, it's pretty rough. And yeah, if you tried like that's the worry I have with the Halloween series is like, man, they're gonna try to explain Michael. It really didn't work out the first time they tried to do it in Rob Zombie's
oh
movie.
god,
And I don't think they'd take the same approach. But for me, the reason why Michael works is the mystery, especially like what you were saying about, if you ended at the first film, it's like, that's totally fine. And to me, Michael, it's the mystery is what makes him so interesting.
yeah,
And even like in 2018, I thought he was the most interesting he had ever been as a character. I
oh
still
yeah,
prefer the original film, but watching Michael in 2018, every time he's on the camera, I'm like, why is he doing what he's doing? I didn't want the answer, but to ask the question is what makes me interested.
See, this is our love for Dave McRae shining through because we are what's his, does he have a name for his fan base? I don't know if he does.
McCrazies.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
No, but it's
the
like
mood and atmosphere and nuance.
The theater of the mind. No, the
theater of the mind.
The David Gordon Green films really do a good job of never quite answering that question. So they that's something that I would give them. Like, dude, when I saw 2018 in theaters, I was so fucking pumped, dude. When they do that smash cut, when he's like screaming, say something into the title card, I got like goosebumps in the theater. I was like, let's fucking go. That first viewing, I was very high on 2018.
Yeah.
I've come down on it slightly, but I do still really like it. I don't care for kills so much. And on my first viewing of Ends, I had the sort of the opposite reaction with 2018, where I really didn't like it at all, but it kind of stuck with me, and I kept thinking about it, and I was like, "There's some things in that movie that are like really cool and interesting, and like, if anything, I kind of wanted more of that, and I don't think they went crazy enough with it." So I actually kind of come around, and I actually do kind of appreciate Ends more as time's gone on.
Yeah, I think Ends is like,
sorry, we
I
got
think
into
it
like
arguably
Halloween
has
talk.
the best soundtrack. Oh no, we're cool. I friggin' love Halloween. I can talk about it all the time. I love Ends, and I
Cool,
kind of
no,
do wish that
we're bouncing around and stuff. So
yeah, no, that's fine. That's the fun thing about like the late night,
I think
show is that you can just kind of
I think we have a delay.
bounce around.
Sorry. My
Yeah,
bad.
it'll probably clear up. It's your thunderstorms.
Yeah, it's getting crazy out there.
Well, yeah, just to wrap that up on the David Gordon Green trilogy, I love the soundtrack to Ends is incredible. The performances are great. The way it looks is beautiful. I think it's arguably the best looking and sounding and performed film out of the three. I kind of do wish that it was that they wrapped up the trilogy with something else and that was the next story, or you just let Corey live and then he becomes like the Shape after that.
Or plant Corey in earlier films and maybe lead up to that a little bit better. That's everyone's biggest problem with it above all else, is it just feels like not the time to do this story when you're trying to land the plane of this new trilogy. It was just too divisive. Like, you were never going to capture everyone's approval with that one.
And like, I think with Ends, like, sorry, the first time that I watched it, I came out of the theater and was just like, oh my God, that was amazing. I didn't know if it would be super divisive. I knew that Corey was going to be in the movie because there was like a David Gordon Green interview where he talked about, hey, there's this main character, Corey Cunningham, him and Michael have this kind of relationship. And so that's really all I knew about it. So I wasn't caught off guard, but I do think I've said this a couple times just on like little live chats and stuff like that. They should have, they definitely should have had Corey in 2018 if they knew about it. Then he could have been in like the National Honor Society with Allison. Maybe him and Allison are study buddies, because you get the idea he's a smart kid. He just comes from a poor family. That's why he has to work and save money for college. And then maybe Cameron really doesn't like him. Maybe Cameron's been picking on Corey like their whole lives, sort of like
that would have been a really good idea.
Yeah, like Cameron's dad was a bully when he was a kid, so maybe Cameron's a bully to Corey. He doesn't, and then Corey doesn't even have to be in Kills because it's just the same night or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So then you
Yeah,
bring him
actually,
back
give
and
us
you're
the
like, oh, it's
movie.
that guy.
Yeah, give us a movie to forget about him, and then, oh, he
Hmm.
shows up again. Just something to kind of
Yeah.
allude to the fact that this might be a thing that happens. Like, it's so
Yeah.
out of left field.
And then the relationship with Allison is sort of like kind of comes full circle, like when they end up dating after high school and stuff. You know what I mean? Like after they both went through this tragic thing, and
Yeah.
that to me just seems a little bit more, believable. Holy cow,
Yeah.
we got Garrett from Born to Be Rad
What's up,
hopping in the
Garrett?
chat. What's happening, man?
What's
Away
up,
on
brother?
vacation. Hope you're having a great time. Hope vacay is great. I'm sure you have
Yeah,
all sorts of videos lined up.
enjoy your vacation, Garrett.
Hell yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the going back to Long Legs really quick, it's like, yeah, to have a prequel would just be, I
Oh,
don't want to. I felt like that everything was perfect. They told me exactly as much as I wanted to
yeah,
know.
I
Like,
knew. Yes, exactly.
like
There
I
is a bit of an exposition dump towards the end that kind of just lets you know what's been going
mhm,
on, but
yeah.
there's also a lot that's just not explained.
Mhm,
So I can see like a lot of people like to. I don't want to use the word spoon feed because
mhm,
that has a negative connotation to it, and I'm really not trying to like look down on people who want more out of these things,
yeah.
because if that's your takeaway, then that's your takeaway, and you're not necessarily wrong. But I think in certain instances, it's just important to be like, okay, but that's probably not what lends itself well to this particular film. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think like the anything that's going on that's like supernatural or anything like that, if you try to explain it, it's gonna be so convoluted sounding.
And it's not
I
going to
mean,
be a satisfying answer.
yeah,
You
if
know?
you want to see an exercise in trying to explain things, watch like Halloween 5 and Curse of Michael Myers, and then watch like Jason Goes to Hell, and like
Yeah,
you can or Freddy's Dead, and you can watch these movies where you're like, oh, right when they tried to explain it is when it became like ridiculous. It's like, so especially with something like this, because it's supposed to be, pretty serious stuff. One thing that really stood out to me and that I keep on thinking about is friggin' Micah Monroe's like breathing was like really almost like controls your heartbeat in some of those scenes. That
yeah,
like audible, intense breathing where I'm like,
yeah,
I'm thinking, I'm like, this chick, she could win an Academy Award for this thing. Nicolas Cage could certainly at least get nominated, maybe win his second, because I think he won for Leaving Las Vegas.
he did. Yeah,
Um, and it's like this is one of those movies that could kind of be a sleeper for Oscar. Like it's not Oscar bait, but when you see a horror movie that does these like crime thriller elements, you're like, man, that's the
yeah,
kind of horror movie that could actually sneak in, like Silence of the Lambs, which won Best Picture and
right. And
I think Best Director.
it's so Silence of the Lambs coded that
Hmm.
that it does kind of slot into that field where it is a horror film, but it also has some really great performances attached as well.
Oh
But
yeah,
I don't.
no,
I
it's
feel like that was the last one we'll ever get was Silence. Like I don't know that we'll ever get another one. Like if Toni Collette or even I don't think it was personally. I didn't think Mia Goth was Oscar worthy, but there are a lot of people who did, and so maybe
mm,
I'm just wrong on that one. But the
mhm,
point is, there's performances coming out from horror films every year that a lot of
yeah,
people think are Oscar worthy, and we don't get shit. So
yeah.
um, I don't know that is something we'll ever see again, honestly.
Well, I think this movie just has some mass appeal though, because it's not just the horror fans that are going to go to it. It's going to be the people that like the true crime podcasts. It's going to be like I could see like even like older like my mom's in her 70s, right? I could see people, she has like a group of friends she goes and sees movies with. Like I could see a group of like older ladies being like, ooh, this looks like interesting and mysterious, because my parents
Yeah,
watch all those like British cop dramas that get really intense and really violent and all that stuff. So it's not like Jason or Freddy or anything like that. It's like it's this horror film that fits all these different types. So that's the reason why I think like maybe this one could rise to that. But yeah, I mean, I don't really care. I don't really pay attention to the Oscars, honestly. I gave up on that
yeah.
once I became an adult.
It's nice when a movie that you really like wins something because then you kind of feel
Hmm.
vindicated. And the show is fun to watch. I enjoy the last couple of years I've actually gotten pretty into watching the Oscars. Seeing Brendan Fraser win for The Whale and
Yeah.
seeing Ke Huy Quan make his like return to acting with
Yeah.
an Oscar win was like a really cool narrative to follow. So there has to be a fun like narrative for me to kind of get invested
Yeah.
in.
Isn't
So
it's wild. It's like, you're like, why didn't they bring that guy back for the last Indiana Jones movie? Like, talk about a way to pass the torch.
what
He
a
could
what
have
a
been the
fumble.
guy.
What a fumble. And it's like it's not like he was doing something else.
No.
You could have easily got him back in, dude.
They
I
still
don't
could have
know.
had what's her face in it, because I kind of enjoyed her character to a degree in that movie. Man, that movie was really bad. That movie makes
It
Kingdom of the
was
Crystal Skulls look good,
it was
or
rough.
look okay.
I don't think I've thought about it like maybe once since I saw it last year.
Yeah.
Like it was such like such a bummer, man. Honestly, just
I
a bummer.
I just remember thinking at the end when they like knock him out and take him on the plane right before
Yeah.
they time travel. I'm like, why are the Nazis are keeping Indiana Jones alive for us? That's the only reason. They're
Yeah.
killing everyone else.
Yeah,
Why do they want to bring
for
Indiana
the
Jones back?
imaginary audience that is
Um,
not
like
visible.
you're gonna kill this guy. What's the point? Just put a bag over his head, shoot him in the head, and leave him there on the tarmac. I mean, that's what they randomly they travel back to the Battle of Syracuse or whatever, and they start shooting people there. I'm like, oh, they're indiscriminately shooting people in ancient Greece, but they won't just kill the
Right?
old
You could
archaeologist on their plane that can thwart their whole plan.
the whole the bigger I think I look at a movie like that and I come away thinking like you should have just made another movie like a couple years after Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
You know, you should have made hay while the sun was shining because this man is 82 fucking years old.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was old in Crystal Skull, but
Yeah.
you could get a lot more out of him then. Now
Mhm.
it's just like fucking A, man. Like what are we doing here? It's like you're desperately trying to get this movie out, not to sound morbid, but like before before this man keels over.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
just like I look at the whole thing and it's just like, dude, this movie should have came out like 10 years ago.
Yeah. Or they should have just rebooted and recast it. I know everyone would freak out if they did that. My hot take for that film is the time travel should have gone according to Mad's plan. So they go back, right? Because he's trying to kill Hitler and replace him, right? He's like, I'm going to be the one that's going to like actually win World War II, right? That's his whole idea. So I thought I'm like, man, it would have been really interesting. What if they did go back? Time travel works. Now Indiana Jones is in this weird conundrum where he actually has to save Hitler's life because that's the way the Allies win the war. The Allies win the war the way it all worked out. But if Mads takes over and he kind of knows what to do strategically, then maybe the Allies could risk losing it. So I was like, that would have been a wild, like, twist for Indiana Jones to actually need to make sure that things went the way they were supposed to go. That's my Indiana Jones hot take for whatever that movie's called. I already forgot the name. Dial of Destiny. Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yeah. That would have been interesting, man. Like, and you know, I do think that writing out look, I mean, obviously Shia LaBeouf's had problems like in his personal life that probably prevented him from ever being in Dial of Destiny. But you know, I will say that he was not the problem with Crystal Skull. I think he's actually pretty solid in that movie.
Yeah.
And like for what he needed to do, he was great. So I think there was basically just with Dial of Destiny, there was a lot of wasted potential. Not bringing back Ke Huy Quan. I know people probably are sour on Shia LaBeouf, so that might have actually done more harm than good. But you know, in a different world where maybe he was, you know, didn't have so much trouble in his personal life, would have been nice to see him come back and maybe take the mantle over. But that's the problem is like nobody wants to see someone take the mantle of Indy. Like it, I kind of think it should die with Harrison, because no one's ever going to live up to Harrison, and it's a tough situation. I wouldn't want to be in charge of that franchise because however you go about it, you're going to piss somebody off. So
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was odd for them to just kill him off with like lines of dialogue. I'm just like, well, that sucks because if you ever
Yeah.
wanted to bring him back, you don't have to kill him off. And then part of me started thinking, I'm like, oh, is Indy gonna try to use the dial to like go back in time and save him? All the things that I thought they should have done, they didn't do any of those things. They just
Yeah,
did
right.
all the weakest shit that you could think of.
And
But
that's
yeah,
again, the fans know what you should do. Listen to the
yeah.
fans, you know?
Yeah. And the time to reboot Indy would have been like 20 years ago, where you could have had somebody like Ashton Kutcher jump into the role, or somebody like Chris Pine maybe 10, 15 years ago. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? People that have that look, but now maybe they're just a little too old to start,
You
you
know what
know?
would have been cool is if you had, because at that time Harrison Ford was older, but not so old to where he is now, where you could have had a situation where he's sort of in the Sean Connery role from
Yeah.
Last Crusade, where he's like the
Hmm.
curmudgeonly older guy, and then you have a new one where they can still both get active and do lots of different stunts and stuff, but it's very much a passing of the torch situation where
Yeah.
you're seeing Indy step into that role that his dad was in Last Crusade. I think that actually would have been a really cool direction to take it.
Yeah, that's the way to pass it off. And you know, maybe it's just one of those things too where it's like that style of movie just isn't, it's tough to modernize it because it's just
Yeah.
such an old school, you know, that based on the serials, everyone knows that. To
Yeah.
me, the original trilogy kind of has a little bit of like a Bond kind of feel, because there is kind of like a duality, you know, with Indy being the professor and then, you know, putting on his other outfit, and the two worlds are sort of connected, but not necessarily everyone knows like what he does when
Yeah.
he puts on the fedora and all that.
He's
So
kind of like Batman in a sense,
yeah. Oh
where he
yeah, for
leads these
sure.
these two different lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's always jet setting everywhere and all that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. What's your favorite indie movie?
I think it's still Last Crusade. So I just recently rewatched him and did like a retrospective with Chris Snyder from movie Misfits. I
Oh,
had never
cool.
seen Crystal Skull or Dial of Destiny, but I rewatched all of the films. And I think Last Crusade is my favorite still. I love it.
I think that the first three are all perfect, and I really love all three of them. So it's a case of like, how do you stack up three masterpieces? I
Hmm.
really, really like Temple of Doom. I don't think I could, in good conscience, put it as my number one, but I really do love Temple of Doom. I love how different it is.
Yeah.
Um, I love how it's the middle one. It's sort of the black sheep, and then it's sort of bookended by these two that are a little more closer in. They have like the religious iconography that they're
Hmm.
chasing with the Ark and the Grail and stuff. And perhaps if you hadn't taken that wide left turn with Temple of Doom, Last Crusade might not have hit the way that it did. Like if they were all
Hmm.
three kind of the same movie, more or less,
Yeah.
it would give me have gotten a little stale. So I
Hmm.
really appreciate all of them, honestly. And it's a case where there are really no wrong answers um outside of 4 and 5. Like any of the first three being your favorite would I would understand that. So
Yeah, I think when I rewatched him, I was like, man, Raiders just like I enjoy it, but it does feel really old. Like the fighting is just really like old school, and it feels
yeah,
older than it is. I know it's early 80s, but it feels 81 or something. It feels like it's from the 60s or 70s. And
yeah.
then Temple of Doom, I thought was just sort of like I don't think there's much substance in Temple of Doom, but I do agree with you that it's tonally different. So I do like that they shake it up. The opening scene is incredible in Temple of
Oh
Doom. It's
yeah.
like arguably the best opening scene. I mean, the one in Last Crusade's great too. They all have great openings, but there's something about the nightclub atmosphere that felt really James Bond to me in that one.
Oh yeah.
But what's her face yelling all the time sort of takes it down for me a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, I think
What's her
there's
name?
something with,
Willie, I think her name is.
yeah, Willie. With Last Crusade, I love the Sean Connery thing like you had brought up. And there's just something about, I just think that movie is perfectly paced. I feel like the way that the lore that they build around that book, the lore they build around like Catholicism. I grew up Catholic, and even like the lore that they made, I mean, it's all like kind of like, you know, based on real things, but made up about those real things.
Right.
So it's sort of like a comic book movie. It's kind of like when the X-Men interact with like real world events in film. It's like, oh, they're interacting with Nixon and the civil rights movement,
like senators and shit. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So like I kind of like something about that with The Last Crusade. And I mean that end scene, like in the, you know, the Petra temple where, you know, he goes through the trials. I mean, that's just friggin' incredible. So yeah, what can you do? But yeah, those
Raymond in the chat makes a good point where he says Temple of Doom is fun because he kind of just, the whole movie's like an accident. Like he kind of stumbles into the whole thing, which is really fun. I forget about that.
Yeah, they just like wash up there and walk up to those people, and the guy's like, "Our gods sent you here," and he's like, "Huh?"
And he's like, "Fuck, like I guess I gotta help."
Yeah,
when people forget Temple of Doom is a prequel to Raiders. It's actually set before that movie, so
and it does have religious ties in a sense. I mean, it's not like Judeo-Christian kind of religion, but there is some of that element there. I mean, even Crystal Skull like plays into that. I think Dial is really the only one that is like has none of that element. It's all just about the pure like science and alchemy and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah, which I do appreciate that aspect of it. The fact that each indie movie kind of ends with this like, up until the finale, it's very like steeped in like real world, you know, like stakes, and then it kind of takes like a hard left turn, and something crazy happens. I like that kept that with Dial. Whether it works for you is going to vary, but I like that they kind of went for it, you know, with the time travel thing.
Yeah, they all go into the supernatural at some point there,
which I like, because it's like Indy's this very like not average Joe, but he's just a gruff, he's a dude, and it's like now he's faced with this like such larger than life situation that's so bigger than him, and the way that he deals with that is always pretty entertaining to watch.
Yeah, it's mostly like grounded throughout.
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for.
That departure there, yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, we've talked about everything tonight, Mark. We're coming up on 2.5 hours of this episode of Late Night with the Davey. I think that Mark and I could probably talk for the rest of the night, but maybe
I was just thinking that, man. Yeah, we could call it here, but dude, yeah, it's really great talking to you. I could have easily went for another hour, so but it's really fun talking about lots of different stuff.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we should put something together, you know, where we do maybe put together a pre-recorded vid or do a live on your channel or something where we can actually, maybe we can focus on a topic. Would be kind of cool. And that'd then cool, you know, be fun to do something like that. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's been great chatting with you. A brother from another mother.
Facts, dude. It was a great discussion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Guys in the chat, because we've still got about a dozen of y'all hanging out with us. Let us know if you have any questions or anything like that for Mark, anything that you want us to address. I think I saw a couple questions come through while we were chatting. Someone asked about Karate Kid movie with they're bringing back Ralph Macchio and Jackie Chan. They're blending those worlds. I didn't know anything about that.
I had heard a headline about that, but that's one of those things where I would be not surprised if it wound up not happening, because it seems like these days it seems like a lot of movies get announced that ultimately never happen. So I'm more of like a wait and see kind of person, where it's like once I see the trailer, you know, then I'm more inclined to believe you.
I feel the same way about that. I know what you did last summer, Legacy sequel. I'm like, yeah, I'll believe it when I actually see something.
Yeah, with they're bringing back Jennifer Love Hewitt or whatever.
The Legacy sequel that extra nobody asked for, right? Antonis wants to know what your favorite Chucky movie is.
I really love the first three. I don't want to say 2 because that seems to be like sort of the popular answer. I'll say 3 today. You caught me on a day where 3 is my favorite. 3 seems divisive. Like a lot of people don't like 3. 3's got some really cool moments in it. I love
Mhm.
when Chucky like switches the bullets with like real bullets.
That's hardcore.
It's so hardcore and such a thing that
Yeah.
Chucky would do. And then there's this like crazy like the movie like when that character jumps on the grenade
Oh
and
my
like
god, heartbreaking.
it's like and it's so it for how heartbreaking it is. It's like, dude, this isn't a Child's Play movie, and it's this
Mhm.
like throwaway character that you don't think about a lot. Three's got some really cool stuff in it, and then they've got that
Yeah.
amusement park sort of finale. I think three's
Mhm.
awesome. I'm going 3
Yeah,
on that.
the amusement park finale is, pretty epic for sure. That
Yeah.
the all 3 of the first films have great finales. Yeah. Antonis, I'd probably say the first one for me. I know you're not asking me, but I'm just gonna say it.
The
I
first
love
one
that
would
the
be my second as well. It's
yeah,
right there.
it plays like just like a cop drama with this killer doll. It's kinda cool how it like another movie that if it was the only one that existed, we'd look back at it and be like, "Wow, what a crazy concept," for a film.
Yeah.
But
They're like
thankfully they made more because Chucky's a great character.
they were like actually trying to make a horror movie with the first one, where they were like, all right, let's
Yeah.
do this like serious. And they kind of do that with 2 and a little bit less with 3. And then after that, it's like,
Mhm.
okay, we're just making comedies now. But yeah,
Yeah.
that first one actually does feel like a little sinister.
Yeah, they decided to use Chucky's personality for some, some jokes and stuff later on. But yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. The first one is like, yeah, my wife can't watch any of them. She can't do any of it. Raymond wants to know what your favorite franchise is.
So I assume you mean horror franchise. Um,
Huh.
I don't know,
You could
just
give
because
a horror and a non-horror if you want.
if we're going horror, I will say Friday the 13th. I think the Paramount 8 are like the peak. Um,
Mhm.
Even Jason Takes Manhattan is really good. Not really good. It's really entertaining. I'll say it's really entertaining.
It's got its
Um,
moments.
yeah. So the Paramount 8 in particular of Child's Play or not Child's Play, Friday the 13th are a damn good time. And then if we're going just like normal movies, man, that is hard. That is a hard question to answer,
Mhm.
especially off the top of my head. I'm like trying to look at my shelves right now to kind of get an idea.
Well, it is Tales
Um,
from the Shelf, so
right, right. I can't I can't really answer that, man. I don't want to cop out, but I would have to do some research to give like a well informed answer. Yeah, I'll just say horror. Or Friday is my favorite horror franchise.
perfect. That's a good one. Let's
Thank
see
you
here.
to the
Vanderhop subscribed.
I've noticed I've gotten a handful of subscribers from your audience here tonight, so I'm very grateful to you and to everyone to subscribe. It's super cool. I really appreciate it.
That's awesome. I didn't even do like the hard pitch or anything. That's great.
No,
Yeah,
it's very
the
cool.
loyal subjects know to go over and subscribe.
No,
Yeah, guys.
it's super cool. I definitely appreciate it a lot.
I mean, that's one of the perks about, the collaborative kind of thing on YouTube is that you're able to, cross over and have, get your channel and have your personality seen and experienced by people that just haven't been able to check it out yet. So, yeah, sometimes it's just something great is out there on YouTube and you don't even know. So, that's one of the reasons why, with starting this show, it's like, lift each other up, hang out with each other, all that kind of fun stuff. But it's like, these are the really fun shows for me where it's like, this is the first time we've really interacted other than DMs. And I've had a bunch of guests that have been like that, which is really cool because on the one sense, I feel like, oh, I'm in the hot seat as like the guy hosting the show. But at the same time, it's like, I'm just going to treat this like I'm hanging out with a buddy I've known for decades,
Yeah, and we
like,
talked for 2.5 hours and
geez, I know.
could have went longer. That's the cool part.
Yeah, my cat is like crying underneath the door. He's like, "Come on, Dad, don't you love us?" And I'm like, "Yep."
Right? I'm like usually getting ready for bed, but like not that that's I'm good. I can go for I'll be all right. I just am like usually winding down right now. But
I hear you.
the
Yeah,
conversation's been great, so it's so worth it. So
yeah. Well, hell yeah, man. Really appreciate you coming out. I'm happy that you've been able to get some subs. Look, you got some more coming. There it is. That's awesome.
you guys are
Uh,
too kind.
there it is. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
It's so cool. Like anytime I'm watching other, like, if something comes across my feed, I'll always sub to someone. Like, it's
Mhm.
it's like, why not? You know, like, I'm one of those people who's
Yeah.
just like, why not? Like, because I'm in the same boat. Like, I'm trying to do this YouTube thing, and if I see
Yeah.
someone trying to do the YouTube thing, I'm like, okay, well, I would want them to sub to me, so I'm going to sub to you because
Yep.
anytime you open up like the studio app and notice you got another subscriber, it's like a nice little hit of dopamine, and it's like it just makes your day
It
just
is.
that much a little bit better. You know, it's cool.
It is. It's wild. Sometimes, yeah, like anytime I've hopped on someone else's channel and then I'm done, I, check my sub count and I'm like, whoa, I just got like a nice little surge,
I've been
that's where
very
it's at.
lucky too. Like Mid-Level Media had me on his channel. You know, Ken from Mid-Level Media.
Yeah.
He,
I don't know him, but I know the channel. Yeah.
he's more of physical media, but like he had me on his channel like super early, and I think he got me like 40 subs, and it was like when I had just made my channel. So I was very fortunate to get a big bump from him.
That's
Um,
awesome.
Jeff Rossio had me on his podcast. Um, got a big bump from that. Like I've just been very fortunate, so I always try to give back and not take my position for granted.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's the thing too, is, I'm like, I always say this to everybody in the chat. You guys are probably sick of me saying it, but you guys are, what fuels me to keep on coming back. And, I feel like I'm hanging out with this awesome same group of friends every time I hop on. I feel so incredibly fortunate that when I decide to go live, I don't have to worry that it's just going to be me talking to myself. And it's all because of everyone in the chat. I don't know how often you've been able to hop in, Mark, and check out like the live streams, but all these folks pretty much show up for every single one. It blows my mind, especially at where my sub count is, to have like 15 to 20 people watching a live. I feel incredibly blessed and thankful for sure. I had a funny, like on New Year's Eve, I was like at like 280 subs, and I was like, I really want to get to 300 before the new year. And I'm like, how am I going to close that gap? Because at that time it seemed so insurmountable, to go from
Yeah,
280 to 300.
it's
I
a lot,
seriously,
dude. It's a
like,
lot.
yeah, and especially when when you have a low sub count, like YouTube ain't really showing off your shit.
Yeah.
But I hopped on, like I watch a whole bunch of different stuff. I watch sports, all that kind of stuff. There's this guy, Brandon Perna. He does That's Good Sports. I don't know if you guys are aware. He talks a lot of football and stuff. He's very entertaining. The dude is got a great team of writers. I'd imagine he writes as well. But he's one of these guys that if you guys enjoy sports, especially football, you should go check him out. He's like 500,000 subs or whatever. I hopped on his New Year's Eve stream like early in the day, and I was like, Brandon, really love your channel, trying to hit 300 subs. Any chance you'd give me a shout out? And he pulls the chat on there and he's like, all right, everyone, go over there and sub to Davey Deathray. And he's like, Davey, I don't know what your shit is, but it better not be weird. He's like, I'm gonna sub too. We'll just see. And
Wow,
I got like 100, like 100 people went over from his chat and just blew the thing up. And it just like,
dude, that is
I'm like,
so cool,
man,
man.
this is the power of just connecting. And I mean, in that instance, I was straight up asking for it. But
Dude,
I'm
I've done
like,
the same thing. Like, it's no shame, dude. Like, it's
yeah.
like when I was closing in on 1,000
Mm-hmm.
from 900, it's like, okay, now is the time where I'm like, hey, if you're gonna give me a sub, now would be great, because like I'm very close to like my goal or whatever, and it would be
Yeah.
super cool if I mean, I wouldn't do it all the time, but when you're hitting those big milestones, I don't think there's any shame in being like, hey, you don't have to, but just so you know, I'm close to this goal, and if you want
Yeah.
to, like, that would be cool as fuck. So
Exactly. Yeah. Like we
that's
just hit 750 and I really want to get to 1,000 by the end of August. I don't think it's going to happen. So prove me wrong, everyone in the chat. And
I
I'm fine
saw
if
that
it
you
doesn't
hit that
happen.
today. That was
Like,
really cool.
yeah, every little milestone's great. And it's like, if it doesn't happen, that's fine. I'd rather set a bigger goal and come up short
Hmm.
than just, so whatever, we'll see. But anywho, I've held you hostage here long enough, Mark. This has been amazing, man. We've straight up talked for 2.5 hours here. We talked about Halloween. We talked about biopics, music biopics. What else did we talk about? Superman. We talked about
We
long
kind of
legs.
hit a lot of different topics, man.
Yeah.
It was great.
This was incredible. I'd love to, of course, either have you back on, whether it's, it doesn't even have to be this show. We can do something here on the channel, or of course I'd, be more than happy to, show up on your channel sometime. So, yeah, man, this
we'll
has
be
been
talking.
awesome. It's been, yeah, for sure. It's been really cool getting to know you. Really appreciate you coming by. Guys, I've got links in the description below for Tales from the Shelf for the YouTube, the Instagram, and Twitter. I know Mark said he's not on Twitter very much, but maybe if you go over there and follow him and bug him a whole bunch, maybe he'll hop back on.
Thank you.
Twitter
man.
is the
I appreciate all that. That's
yeah,
like
of
above
course.
and beyond. Usually,
yeah, no,
the YouTube thing, but no, that's super cool.
I try whatever like social links I can find. At the beginning of the show, I would like ask people for their links, and no one would give them. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna go find them because like I'm not bringing you on the show for not like you're a guest, so like we're gonna show you some love. So
That's
yeah,
right.
guys, go over there. If you haven't subbed already, give Mark a sub. Check out his vids. If you enjoy what you're seeing over here on the Davey Deathray channel, you're going to enjoy what Mark's doing over there. He's been at it for coming up on his 2-year anniversary here in a few months. So go show him some love, and maybe you'll see my ugly mug pop up there sometime. You never know. So yeah, Mark, this has been great. Hope you have a peaceful night of rest and the thunderstorms don't keep you awake for too long here.
Yeah.
Think about what your favorite franchise is that's not horror. You can come back on just to let us know.
Yeah, dude, it's gonna occur to me when I'm laying in bed tonight. I'm like, of course, I should have just said that.
It's perfect. But, you're gonna wake up and be like, Back to the Future.
That's an easy one. There's only 3 of those. They didn't have too many opportunities to fuck it up. That's
all
the problem.
Pretty good. They're all pretty good. Yeah.
I can't say Star Wars because it might have been when I was a kid, but now they fucked it up. So it's like the longer these things go on, they fuck them up. But anyway, thanks so much for having me on, dude. This was so serendipitous the way this happened, and I knew I had a feeling. I was like, I want to sit down and talk with this guy. He seems super chill. We have a lot of mutuals, and I just knew we were gonna have a good talk. So I'm really glad we got to do this.
Hell yeah, man. It was great, and we'll be sure to work together sometime soon. So yeah, guys, check out Mark. Really appreciate you coming by. Tales from the Shelf. Check him out. Have a great night, Mark.
Good night, everybody.